Holy crap, Kinda Funny is going to be at PAX East in a major way. Friday morning at 11:30 will be the Kinda Funny panel with the whole podcast crew, and Saturday will be the Kinda Funny / Hitman party at Coppersmith at 8 p.m. We'll also be part of 6 other panels throughout the weekend, like Paxomania and Deus Ex, so check kindafunny.com/PAX East for all the details. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kinda Funny Gamescast, episode 65. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside my Canadian Maple Leaf, Mitch Dyer.
We did it. We're back together again.
They said we'd never get back together, but here we are on a very, very special first ever episode 65 of the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Tim and Nick, I said get out of here. Yeah. Colin, hit the bricks.
Yeah, I was there.
Mitch Dyer's coming through, and I want to talk to Mitch Dyer all to my lonesome. I have a special. I'll tell you I'll steal one of Tim's lines. If you're supporting us on Patreon, this one's worth the $1. This is a good one. You're gonna get a good show here. I love Mitch, one of my most fascinating people in the industry.
You're hyping this up a lot.
I know you're gonna deliver.
Sorry about your $1.
I know you're gonna deliver. I don't know why he says that either, because it's always more than $1. if you're getting early access to the show,
sorry about your $10.
It's $5 or $10. But he always says it's worth the $1. But I think he's going back to when we used to make you pay on Bandcamp. It's a grandfathered in term, a colloquialism. You ever heard of that? You have those up in Canada?
From colloquial times.
From colloquial times. That's right. This has been a great show. I'll talk to you next time. If you didn't know, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Each and every week, we come to you, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, best friends who gather around this table, each bringing a random video game discussion topic for you. I'm using the Game Over Greggy intro because I don't host this show.
I'm here once every 65 weeks.
I like that a lot too. Mental note.
Write down that joke.
1:30. He's got to come back. 1:30. Mitch has got to come back.
Is that math?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If you know, this is the video game show. We get together. We talk about topics pertaining to the video game industry and things. If you like that, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where you can support us and get each and every episode early, along with a bunch of exclusive perks and bonuses. If you have no money or buck to toss us, like you, did you point yourself on that one?
Super broke. I'm unemployed. I'm literally not have a job right now.
You can head over to youtube.com/kindafunnygames, where we put up the show topic by topic, day by day, until we post the entire thing as one big video in MP3 the following Friday.
You've got that spiel on lockdown.
And that's why I fucked up the first part, because I'm doing the Game Over Greggy part, but it's hard to insert
Game Over Greggy is
Gamescast.
dead now. It's all about the Gamescast.
It is all about the Gamescast. Probably what'll be our best episode ever. Everybody,
suck it, Colin.
He doesn't care. Colin's happy to be in his room playing Ratchet & Clank.
Yeah.
He's getting ready to go to a Homefront event right now, which the Let's Play will already be live by the time you see this. youtube.com/kindafunnygames. So go there and watch it, unless something horrible went wrong. That's always the problem.
What if it's a really bad Let's Play? Then don't go watch it.
No, still go watch it. I don't care. Just give me the view.
Yeah,
give me the money.
Leave
I don't care about any of the content.
But make it a nice comment, even if it's a bad video.
Exactly.
You tried, Colin.
Exactly. Colin tried really hard at that game, and it turns out his thumbs just aren't what they used to be, and he can't keep up. He's so used to playing the Vita now that when he tries to play with the DualShock, it just doesn't work.
Colin's hands are just perpetually like this.
Yeah. For a number of reasons, not just the controller one. Mitch Dyer, how the hell are you?
Doing all right, man. I'm unemployed.
Yes, that's the big thing.
I'm between jobs.
If you don't know who Mitch Dyer is, worked at IGN for how long?
Almost 5 years.
And you just quit?
Yes.
Okay. So you're coming to work for Kinda Funny like everybody else?
Yeah. Of course.
Great. Oh, good. I'm glad we could say. No, you haven't announced where you're going.
I've not. I have a new thing lined up. I'm currently unemployed, so I'm hanging out here.
Okay.
Just, doing whatever I want to do. I'm on unemployed days. It's great.
What does the public know about what you're doing next?
Nothing.
Okay.
They know that I have a job lined up, and that's it.
Okay.
I can't say a whole lot.
Okay.
But soon I will be able to share more. But what I can say is I'm leaving Games Press, which is what I've done for the better part of a decade, and I'm gonna go make a game. Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Of course, your Twitter's been promoted. That's what people should follow to keep up with when you announce things and when you. Does our timeline sync up?
It'll be
Friday. This episode goes live
very soon.
Okay.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Very soon. I want to talk a little bit about that whole thing, games journalists and whatnot. But when we have a guest on, what I like to do, or what Tim likes to do, and I'm just ripping him off.
That's fine.
Is start with who is blank, the guest. Who is Mitch Dyer?
Big questions.
I want to know more about you, Mitch.
Okay.
I know you're Canadian.
Yeah.
I know you were nipping at my heels for a long time.
Is that true?
I don't know about that, but I remember yours is a name when I started at IGN and was getting my sea legs or whatever. I remember when your name started getting kicked around more and more. And I'd see you in there, Mitchy D on the Twitter. They were talking about it. And I remember you wrote an article one day that I always bring up to you and you always forget about. But it was the top gaming personalities to follow on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And you put me on there.
Did I?
Yeah, and you said...
I didn't put Alex Navarro on it. Suck
Fuck
it, Navarro.
you, the Wolf. What a piece of garbage that guy is. The worst PAX wrestling champion we've ever had.
Yeah.
You put me on there and you said, what I respected about you is that you knew who you were writing about, because you put on there, like, there's many people and he talks about PlayStation, but the coolest thing about Greg is that if you tweet at him, he's likely to tweet back. And I was like, somebody noticed that I go out of my way.
That was actually just my ploy to get attention.
It worked. Look at that. And I reached over and I said, Per Schneider, hire this man.
And then it was.
And 3 years later, he hired Casey Lynch. No, so I want to know, dial me all the way back. Where I see a glacier in Canada, and that's where you were born.
Yeah, a little baby igloo on top of a glacier. No, I'm from a small town in Alberta, Canada, rural farmland place.
Okay.
And I had like the most uneventful, usual high school life of all time. But in the middle of that, I was like, oh, it's cool that we get to play like Diablo 2 at the computer lab after hours. And the vice principal installed it on all the machines. In hindsight, they were probably all pirated copies.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
He definitely didn't buy.
He wasn't giving that money to Blizzard.
Copies of,
I'm such a fan. Here you all go.
Yeah. And then that was sort of like I'd played games my entire life, which is the most boring thing in the world to say on a video game podcast.
Yeah, but I mean, it speaks to your credibility and where you came from.
My street cred. So I because of that, like I grew up on EGM and OPM and Nintendo Power and all these magazines, and it clicked one day, like I want to do this.
Was it hard? I mean, to be in such a rural part of town?
Totally, yeah. Because I was in a small town where like there wasn't opportunities of the kind of thing that I thought about. Like, I don't know, it's weird. Like I'm trying to think of like what anybody else grew up to do.
Farm,
yeah. Like it was a lot of stuff like that.
Are there a lot of pro wrestlers coming out of there? I know Canada,
there was a lot of amateur wrestling in town. Yeah,
because Lance Storm, he was from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
So was Bret Hart.
Yeah, but Lance Storm said it all the time. Don't get me wrong, I like Bret Hart. I was a bigger Owen Hart fan. Rest in peace. But I don't get me wrong, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Like and this is not to speak ill of anybody there. I just literally don't remember. And I'm sure lots of people went on to do big grand things. Like a friend of mine I went to high school with he worked on Deadpool. And
nice.
Another friend of mine went to work on Warcraft.
Okay. So people are doing things.
Of course. But like everybody, I feel like when you're in a small town, like your biggest goal in life is to get out. But I still love that town. Like part of me still feels like I'll end up there someday.
Do you get back a lot?
Not as often as I would like, but like once a year now. Like ever since moving to California for IGN, after like working freelance in Alberta for
Don't spoil your story.
However long, I go back about once a year.
Okay.
Where are we at in the timeline?
You're still there in high school, Diablo. You started reading EGMs and all these magazines. You're like, this is because that was me too. But see, for me, it was that I have that moment of when GamePro clicked, and I was like, this is what I want to do. But I was a bigger EGM fan, and finally looked and was like, EGM's 2 suburbs away from me in Chicago.
Oh, that's cool.
You know what I mean? Like that suddenly became such a real dream.
Yeah, and in like rural Canada, never mind if I lived in a major city or in like the East Coast where a lot of game dev stuff exists, like it just never crossed my mind that this was even possible.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I'd like to do it. So I'd like work for my high school newspaper, and there was like a startup magazine in town that I was like, cool, I'll write the Spider-Man movie review for this thing when I'm 16 years old and have literally no idea how to write.
Yeah.
And I just did that because it was like, I'm pretty good at English. I'm pretty terrible at everything else. I guess I should harness this in some way to make an English degree worthwhile. So I just started writing about video games, and I started my own blog after working on like one-up blogs for however long, like starting my own thing and just doing that for a while and going, well, I kind of know what I'm doing, right? I think I do. I'm going to just start a website with a friend. And we did that for a while and did that until I just randomly got the attention of an editor at OXM, Dan Amrich, who's now at Ubisoft.
Yeah.
I interviewed him for our little startup website. Just be like, how the games journalism? Secretly employed just to get all the secrets.
Sure.
And hot tips.
I'll just duplicate his strategy.
Yeah. Well, and then after that interview, I just didn't stop bugging him. Like I just stayed in touch in like the least annoying possible way I could think of. And
postcards.
At handwritten letters that were 30
hey,
pages
Dan,
long.
Just thinking about you.
And eventually, it's funny, like I got a stray email from him that was clearly meant to be addressed to somebody else talking about getting me on as freelance. And I was like, I don't know if I should reply to this because it's very clearly not meant for me. He must have just slipped him like thinking, cool, Mitch, typed my name.
Right.
And I waited, and then like 3 weeks later, the editor he meant to email got in touch with me like, oh man, hey, like sorry, we told him to get in touch. Do you want a job doing some stuff for us for money? And I literally didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what.
How old are you at this time?
Maybe 20.
Okay.
Maybe.
What are you doing for a day job then?
I was working at a styrofoam factory.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Doing the most like the laziest, easiest job in a manual labor factory that you could possibly do. Like I literally put a vacuum in a box full of like millions of little beads that become the stuff that's in like beanbag chairs. And like they manufactured that and pressed it, and it like you use it for siding and really boring stuff that you put like under the roads to keep the roads warm in Canada during the winter.
Sure.
And it was like the most awful, boring factory job of all time. And I would like write while I was there because I had a really easy job. So I'd bring my laptop and just write while I did my super easy job.
And are you writing fiction or are you writing stories?
No, this was all like I'm writing about video games. Like I'm playing games in my spare time. I'm trying to build up PR contacts. I'm trying to figure out how to be a better writer and do all of this. And like I gave up on creative writing pretty early out of high school. Like I wrote a lot in high school. It was all terrible. And I was like, well, this is all terrible and I don't know how to get better. So I quit. You know, like you do when you're ambitious.
Let your dreams go.
So I took this job. I was like, well, I should get this job. I'm not ready for college. Maybe I'll save for college and go in a couple of years. Got my first freelance job. Did that for a while. Decided like, okay, I'm trying to remember the order of things. I think I went to college for a couple of years and got the IGN job opportunity presented itself after like years and years of freelancing.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't because you were freelancing. It seemed like forever.
Yeah, and I was doing magazine stuff. Like I did stuff for GamePro, AtGamer, OXM, PTOM, a bunch of different online, the Games Radar, and different online outlets that like whoever would have me, I would just pitch everybody. And the minute it was weird because the minute I had my name on OXM, it was suddenly like gates opened everywhere where it's like, oh, you write for someone legitimate.
You're approved in some fashion.
Yeah,
Somebody's looked
like,
at your stuff.
OXM hooked me up big time. Like I got a dev kit from them or a debug unit.
The test.
Yeah.
PS2?
So no, Xbox 360.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Come on, Greg.
I was hung up on PTOM. I'm like, I know that magazine, the better one. What up, Scott?
Damn. So I got my debug unit to like review pre-release games, and I reviewed a bunch of trash, and
as you
gave a lot of 4s.
As every freelancer does.
Yeah, you give a lot of 4s to 7s, best case. And the minute I had that debug kit, I was like, "Hey, OXM, like you gave me this. Can I use this? Like, yeah, we don't care. Like,
do our work, but do whatever you want."
And I was like, "Oh, cool." So I went to GameSpot right away and was like, "Hey, do you guys need people?" And immediately started freelancing for GameSpot. So like, "Oh, you have a debug kit?" No freelancer has a debug kit. It was like a hyper rare thing. Like 3 freelancers I've known ever had a debug kit,
right?
Which is crazy. Because like, why would Microsoft ever send me a debug kit?
We'll send
in
this kid
rural Alberta.
This kid in the middle of nowhere. We'll send him one of these $15,000 machines.
So it was like my entire career, like the running theme throughout everything is that people literally just hand me dreams every time. Like with this freelancing thing, it was like, here's everything you need to become a very successful freelancer.
Yeah.
So I like quit my job, freelance full time, went to school.
So I want to know that. How long did it take before you were quitting the styrofoam factory to go out there and freelance?
Years.
Okay.
Still, because I was still like, well, I make decent money freelancing and it's like good extra money to have, but I still like, I was so insecure about like, what if I don't have a full-time job? How do I live my life without a job?
Yeah.
Like still not thinking that freelancing was the job.
Right.
And if I quit the factory, I could do double the work.
If I could do more freelance, I can make more money.
But the factory paid really well, so I
sure. It sounds like a sweet gig.
Yeah, and it was perfect. I made a lot of money, and I hung out, and I made a lot of bad decisions as a young person with my money, and like you do.
Yeah, of course.
So I quit. I freelanced full time for a little bit before I was like, okay, I'm gonna actually go to school now. Went to college for a couple of years, freelanced the whole time, missed classes because I was like, well, I'm on deadline, so I'll skip religious studies this week.
Sure.
Which don't ever do that. Just go to your fucking classes.
Go to religious studies, everybody.
It's a good class. Religion's really cool.
There's a lot of interesting things about religion and theology. Let us tell you about them. We just immediately detour. The Mayans. No.
The Mayans. Where are we in the timeline? I'm in college.
You're in college. You're full-time freelancer. You're skipping classes.
Oh, so I hit this point, and that's when IGN sort of approached me. Like Casey Lynch, who was the EIC at IGN at the time, and I'd worked with and maybe for Casey a couple times in the past because he had flip-flopped between editorial and PR. And he went to IGN, was the editor-in-chief, and was like, hey, do you want a job? And I was like, this is funny. You're like in Canada. I mean, you're in the United States. This is funny.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, literally, like, here, fill this paperwork out. This will begin the visa process. We want you to come work for us.
Nice.
And I was like, this is crazy. I don't want to be in the middle of a semester next year and have this visa get approved and have to go to the States. I'm going to drop out of college for a semester, give IGN the semester to figure out if we can do this. And if I get it, I go. If I don't, I go back to school. And it was like down to the wire. It was like I had to either... Like I packed all my stuff and assumed that I was moving just in case. But it was packed to either go to the States or go back to school. And it was like the week before I had to actually finish like reapplying for all my classes that they were like, hey, this thing got approved. You're going to move to the fucking United States. I was like, okay. So I packed everything I could fit in my car. I drove down and I got an apartment with a friend. I wired him $3,000 to pay for the apartment because California is really fucking cool.
It's yeah.
Rent here is wonderful. Got the place and drove down on a Friday morning, arrived Saturday night, went to work Monday morning.
Damn. What did your parents think when you quit your job to freelance for video games?
My mom for a long time, like my dad was like, oh, cool. Cool. Video games are cool. You're writing about video games, cool. My mom knew that like I grew up reading these magazines, but she was still very hesitant because my mom is she's not protective, but she's very like, hey, make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
And if it's not okay, fucking figure it out. Like I had a job when I was 12 because she was like, hey, you should get a job. You're 12.
You're like, I don't think labor laws allow that, Mom.
So I did like hockey refereeing, which was cool.
That is a kick-ass, and that's a very Canadian job.
Super Canadian. Yeah, dude, my dad drives a Zamboni in the winters. Like
God,
that's his second job.
How much did you know about hockey when you became a hockey referee?
Oh, all of it. I've been playing for years.
Okay, cool. Everybody at IGN, I was just assumed is just like me and has no sports acumen at all.
I had a lot more than I do now, for sure. Like now I sort of pretend to follow baseball.
Oh, sure.
Like because my family is like very deep in Detroit Tigers.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh yeah, like I like the Tigers. I love watching baseball. I love going to baseball, but I don't keep up with baseball.
Sure.
And it's like this, I can already see the trajectory of like, I started to care and now I don't. And that was exactly my hockey career. Was like,
Sure.
I really care about hockey. I follow hockey. I don't care.
Yeah, okay. You know what? I don't need this.
No. Now all I care about is Dota 2. That's my favorite sport.
Save that. We got that in reader questions coming out. Same way your
bet we do.
esports shenanigans.
Yes, my mom was always very paranoid about like, are these games people legit? Like, are they really going to pay? And then I showed her like a check I got for $1,200 for a couple magazine features around. She was like, okay, no problem.
I need a car.
I like rewrote a cover story once. Like I did ghostwriting for a cover story because like there was a cover story that somebody wrote for a magazine that was really bad.
Yeah.
And the editor-in-chief sent it to me on a Friday and was like, I need this Sunday night. Can you rewrite this entire thing based on what they wrote, having you have not gone to play this game in another country? And I was like, I'll do what I can. And she's like, cool, is $900 enough? And I was like, that'll
You're like,
be
no,
fine.
$1,200.
Would that I knew. And that was that, like getting that check was where she was like, all right, this is fucking cool. Like you're doing all right. And then when it was like, hey, I'm going to get a salary and benefits and live in San Francisco, she was like, holy shit.
This is a real thing.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, this sucks. My son is moving away, but it's also like cool that you're going to do something you've wanted to do for years.
Only child?
Younger sibling, 2 years.
Okay. He or she still trapped up there?
She is still in Canada.
That's why your mom's like, whatever. I got one. You can get out of here.
She's also got the granddaughter now. So she's like, whatever.
Oh
goodbye.
my God, man. She's
I've been
fulfilling all the
totally
check
replaced.
boxes.
Totally.
Yeah, okay, great. Now, here, the other week, 2 weeks ago, yeah, we had Andrea Renee on. And she ran us through her side of the industry as a host, right? Because that's
very different stuff.
Exactly. But it was the same. I have the same question for her that I have for you because, like, my journey and to an extent Colin's journey are pretty similar in the way of like my resume is I graduated college and I worked at the newspaper and then I went to IGN and then I founded my business. You know what I mean? Like I never was like in the lurch. Like were there times as a freelancer where you're like, I'm almost out of money, this isn't gonna work?
No, there was a period where I worked for Future US a lot, and that was like official Xbox magazine, PlayStation the official magazine, Games Radar, @Gamer, and there was this like very bleak period where they were like, hey, our budget just got like annihilated.
Decimated, yeah.
And we don't have a freelance budget anymore. So there were months where it was like me, Andrew Gruen, Andrew Hayward, Tim Sepala, and all these people that I knew from like coming up with as freelancers were just like, what the fuck do we do? Like this was our primary point of income. We have nowhere else to go. And which ended up not being true because with the amount of time you had free to not work at Future, you had time to do stuff for everyone else.
Sure.
And it was that kind of pressure that made me go like, okay, like I need to really develop a good pitch. I need to figure out how to pitch something cool and smart and interesting that nobody else is doing. And I got in the habit of doing that.
Did you take classes for that or is that stuff you picked up on?
No, this was all like most things I learned was from other freelancers, like talking to people who were also coming up. Like I would throw, like I'd write a pitch and send it to a freelancer who was like, this sucks. Change this, do it like this. Okay, cool. That's better. Thank you. And we would just back and forth and trade ideas and edits and things like that.
Yeah, see, that culture's so fascinating to me because that was the thing of just coming in and like already being there. You know, I skipped associate editor at IGN. I was just an editor and I jumped in and did all the stuff. And it was a different world back then, a different time for sure.
And I'm sure it is now. Like, I don't know, like the freelancers I know, I don't know if they have the same relationships I did with everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if the IGN freelancers that I worked with talked to anybody else but each other. I'm sure they did, but like because of the nature of like, hey, we need your attention a lot more at IGN. And also you're all together in like a Slack channel or a Skype channel or whatever. Everyone's talking to each other. They're probably often private threads talking about stuff, asking questions, getting help.
I hate Mitch.
Yeah, probably. But before I had access to any of that, it was just like, oh, I know Tim from Twitter. Hey, let's talk to Tim for a while. Hey, Tim, I need help. Can you look at this? Yes,
Right.
but can you look at this? Cool. We just trade.
So then, even though it's not the same, I mean, starting when we're on this pitch thing, what do the keys to a good pitch? Like, what is somebody who wants to pitch something to an editor? Even you know, I guess not for you as much because you're news, but like feature stuff at IGN. If you wanted to pitch a good feature, what do you need to do?
I mean, the thing that I always told people, and this is like only a kind of an answer to that question, but like read stuff that's not games writing. Like if you want to work in games writing and you want to do games journalism stuff, read it obviously, but read it because A, you're interested, and B, you need to find out what's good and what's bad. So look at what people are doing, and there are certain patterns you'll notice, like, oh, they're doing a lot of list features. I should probably pitch a list feature. Even though you might not be super passionate about list features because nobody really is. They do them because they're necessary and a lot of people read them. But writing them isn't the most fun thing in the world, but you can still come up with a cool list feature.
Sure.
And basically, if you come up with something and you're like, cool, have I read this anywhere? Would I read this if I saw it on a website? And if the answer to that is no and yes, then you're good to go. Like if it's not something you've ever seen, you're probably already on the right track. If it's interesting to you, it's probably interesting to a lot of different people. And then when you pitch that to somebody, give them the elevator version, not the... So I'm from a small town in Alberta, and I never dreamed that I'd be a freelance... Just be like, hey, Greg, I have a really cool idea for a feature. Here it is. Let me know what you think. And then you start negotiating fees.
I think that's a good point. Because like I freelanced like for me, I was asking, you know, if you got learned, if someone taught you how to do pitches, right? Because when I got a degree in magazine journalism at Mizzou, that was something we did, you know, and they taught you. And I remember I have like 3 or 4 freelance things under my belt, right? That were like when I left and I was working at the Tribune before I got the column and blog about gaming, you know, Inquest Gamer or whatever, I'd hit up and pitch all these different little features to. And it was, I think the thing people lose all the time is brevity, because you're like, you are as a freelancer, you can speak to more to it obviously than I, but you are such a gnat in this person's world of their inbox.
Totally. Like you are, as somebody who has an idea that they might be able to fill a page with or get rid of some of their budget with to get a cool feature on and hopefully like embed a bunch of videos in it or whatever their approach is, like that. And like that thing I just explained is 5 things that are not the freelancer. So editors who are really interested in a good story are also thinking about 10 million other things.
Right.
And there is no trick to like getting an editor's attention. There's just not. Like sometimes your email gets buried. Sometimes they look at your pitch and go like, that's good, I might come back to that, or no, we already did that. And like not everyone's going to give you a reply. And that sucks, but that's just the nature of it, is like people are too busy to answer every email they ever get. Like I didn't answer every email I ever got from you. Never mind somebody who's like, hey, will you give me money to do something?
Meanwhile, Colin answered an email from me during Colin and Greg Live today.
Nice.
I was like, what are you doing?
You got to run a business, man.
It's true. We wear a lot of hats. A lot of different things are happening.
Yeah.
So when you come over for IGN and you're one of Casey's hires, like I remember was it
2011? It was late 2011. I got full-time contract at IGN. I stopped freelancing. I got paid my salary in Canada, which was amazing. And then I moved to California. Lost all that money forever.
Of course.
But it was February
2012
2012 is when I started at IGN.
Okay, because I remember when Casey said he was going to hire you, and I'm not sure if it's when you were Satellite then or if you were there, but we went to a PAX together, and we were about to get the demo of Mass Effect, whatever it would have been.
3.
And we walked into the thing, and I remember standing next to you and be like, "Oh, that's Mitch. I think I know him. I know him as the Twitter icon. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what he." And then finally at the end we talked about it, and it was like, "Cool." And then however.
Oh yeah, because you would tease me that I was like wrapping Casey around my finger, and I was like, he came to me. I didn't do anything.
Well, it was like, because it was so, Casey came in and like he brought people in, and it was like that thing of like, here we go, like we need to get going, and here are my people, and we're gonna
and it was like you'd come in one day and be like, here's a new guy.
And it was like for you, I knew Mitchie D. You'd been tweeting.
But not a lot of people at IGN did. Like I had met Clements, but when I started, Clements didn't really remember me.
He sucks. Clements,
classic fucking Clements.
Clements is on top of this ivory tower. He doesn't remember anybody unless they're Jack Trenton. You know what I mean?
Go buy his short story, Farious Foxfur. It's really good.
Yes, and do that.
And I started, and there were a lot of people that just like didn't know who I was, and like Casey had talked me up as like, I'm bringing this guy in, he's really great, and everyone was like, fuck this guy out of the gate. Like the deck was sort of stacked against me. Not that IGN were bad people by any means. It was just there was an established expectation of like what I was going to be able to do, and it's like he's just some fucking freelancer coming in full time because he got brought on. Like that's it. And he's like, yeah, that's how I felt too. So it was sort of a trial by fire. Like I had all these people that expected something of me, and I just really wanted to hit those expectations. And I guess I did because nobody hated me.
Right.
Like I sort of fit. It took me a bit to get comfortable because I was like out of the office a lot, so I didn't actually get to meet that many people. And then we had layoffs like a month after I started, so it was like this tumultuous thing of like I don't know where I fit until after like enough time spending time with people and going out to lunches, and was like, oh no, I totally fit with like literally everyone here. This is great.
Yeah. Well, I remember the old days when I used to always joke about it and this is, I think even before Casey's time, but like when we used to bring people into IGN and stuff, I always used to say that we were totally a group of cats. And when, all the other cats are chill with each other and you bring in the new cat and everybody hates the new cat. And then just like one day it's like, oh, you're one of us. You're one of the cats. Yeah. You're one of the cats in this house. It's fine.
Yeah. And there was no like defining moment that flipped the switch. It was like, I just walked into work one day and everything was comfortable.
That means a lot. So then you stay there for 5 years. What do you get hired on as originally?
Associate editor.
Okay. Was the beat Xbox or was that just what your
I was hired on
expertise
to
was?
work at Xbox. Then we hired Ryan McCaffrey to be my boss May. After I was there February, Ryan McCaffrey was May, and we did E3 together. We like went to the conference and did all the Xbox stuff. And it was like shortly after that, it was like maybe a year later where we totally dissolved the channel teams.
Yeah.
And it became about previews, features, reviews, and news, all in separate verticals the same way it used to be channels. And McCaffrey and I never really... We still always did the Xbox stuff, same as you and Colin were still
sounds familiar.
Well, we're just going to gravitate to our PlayStation because that's what we've always done.
Yeah.
And that's what we're really, really good at. And that's where we are connected. So we just kept doing that. And we did the podcast Unlocked, obviously, like you guys did Beyond. And over time, like I gravitated more toward news and reporting and started working with Goldfarb, Andrew Goldfarb, IGN.com. Has he been on this show before?
No, please. We'd never have him on here.
Fuck that guy.
Only people who get to come. If it's not a special event, you have to quit to come on the show. Unless it's GDC, then anybody can come on.
That's true. So I started working with Andrew on news and sort of just stayed there for a while. And then every now and then he'd be like, okay, I'm going to go on a big like IGN first trip with McCaffrey and do features and do... Because basically like the thing I found out is like at IGN, you need to be versatile. You can't just come in and be like, I'm the Xbox guy and I'm only ever going to write about Xbox. It's like, no, like... do that, but also be extremely capable on video and be ready to write a feature and be ready to break out a breaking news story and do an interview and take out all the great quotes and make a story and a feature out of that. It's like, it's a lot. You need to be thinking about a lot in any given moment in the Games Press.
Yeah, no, and I think that's like the biggest way it's all changed. You know what I mean? We'll talk about that in a little bit though. So why, I mean, you keep going, you get drawn to news and that's pretty much where you stay for a long time,
yeah,
right?
Mostly. Yeah, like 2 years, 2.5 years or something like that, I think. I can't remember when I made the jump officially, but like I pulled Steve, our EIC, into a room and was like, hey, I want to do news full time. Like I don't want to, I can't remember what I was doing at the time. Maybe previews, review. I don't really remember, but I was like, news seems really cool and I think I'm really good at it. So let me do that and let me have more time to do reporting and meeting with sources and trying to find cool stories.
I remember that you wanted to go, like, because you wanted to go, like, this is a bad reference and I know you don't like it, but stick with me. You were the guy of like Lois Lane in Batman v Superman who's like, I need to go to Washington for a few days. Totally. I got this thing to chase, da-da-da-da. Yeah,
and he was like, I'm going to take a lunch with a source and come back and have some intel and I'm not going to write anything today, but I have information for a story that I'll write 2 months from now.
Right. That's fascinating. Isn't that cool?
So weird. And it's like, it was a brief moment in my entire career where I was doing actual journalism.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm hunting stuff down and I'm chasing leads. And it's weird, like, because you write news every day, but it's like, yeah, it's okay, Call of Duty announced, DLC coming for whatever. And there are definitely stories to find. And, you know, if you do an interview with a dev, you can get some good quotes and talk about what, you know, making their game meant or what it means for players, things like that. But it was the moment where I had free time to just be like, okay, I'm going to trust Goldfarb. He's going to take care of all that shit. And I'm going to go over here and do my own thing and come back with a story in a week.
Yeah. And you loved it.
I loved it. Yeah. I loved chasing news. And we got like a lot of really cool stories because I had the time and energy to do it.
And then what happened? Because now you're leaving it.
I am leaving
it all behind.
Yeah. Poor Goldfarb.
For Phantom.
He's totally alone.
Phantom game job.
Phantom game job. I like that.
Sounds sexy.
It just... I reached this point, and I think a lot of people in media do, where you look at what's next, and it's this ocean of other opportunities, or climbing the Games Press ladder. And both are appealing for different reasons. And some people stay on the ladder and they climb up the Games ladder and they run websites. Mm-hmm. They start their own website, whatever. Like this guy. Or you look at totally different things because the skill set you've developed in the press starts to align with different stuff. Like I think anybody who comes into the Games Press and decides I'm going to do this and then use it as a launchpad to make games is coming at it with the wrong head, and it's just not going to work. Like you can't come into the Games Press with the mentality of I'm going to leave it eventually to make games.
Sure.
because you're coming into the job for the wrong reasons. You're not going to be into the job. You're not going to be very good at the job. And then you're not going to have the skills or talents to make a game.
You won't be the kind of guy or gal that people want to stick around or that want to work with or want to give information to.
Yeah, like if you're around people to use them for something else, then you're benefiting nobody.
Yeah.
So go, like if you want to make games, go make a game. If you want to write for games or write about games, write about games. Like if you want to do something, just go do that thing. But I think the reason you see a lot of people in the press leave for dev isn't because it's what they were planning all along. It's because that's what their interests sort of became. Like you talk about games long enough with people who make them that you start to think like, oh, like this guy is thinking on another level. And you start thinking about that more and more. And then you take that information to your next interview and you ask a more intelligent question because now you have the knowledge.
Sure.
And eventually you start having conversations with devs in a more unified way than you used to. Like it used to be, I used to ask how many weapons this game had. And now I'm asking like how they, changed a system with the engine and how like the art teams collaborated with whatever, right? Like
yeah. Technical stuff, not back of the box.
Yeah,
quotes.
it's like, and it's hard without like a specific example to give a general answer to that. But you start thinking about the design of a game and the creation of the game, and not just the game itself.
Sure.
And I feel like those kinds of conversations make you think about games differently when you play them. At which point, a lot of people start going like, I wonder if I could do this. And some people go like download Game Maker, they download Unity, and they start tinkering with stuff. They start writing a story in Twine, and then they publish it, and it's just there. And like people,
did you do these things?
A few of them, yeah. Like I tinkered with Unity, and I tinkered with Twine, and I tinkered with Unreal, and never really made anything like, oh, this is a game. But it's like, oh, I understand now why when I cross a certain threshold in a game, the trigger happens, and now it creates like a lighting thing, or it creates a script that allows actor to enter the screen, whatever. Those kinds of things. Like I have a better understanding of that. I still don't know anything about the act of like designing a game.
Sure.
At all. And like the thing I'm most excited about going to dev is like I want to sit next to a designer and be really annoying and be like, hey, I'm going to sit here all day and just watch you.
Hey, build whatever you're building and let me watch.
Yeah, and then
how
I'm
it
going to
happens.
pest you about why you're doing it. Because I want to know this stuff. Like, I want to know how it works.
They're going to love you at this job.
I hope so.
A lot of things are going to get done. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be doing something, sir? I feel like you should be doing something.
That's why I'm here, right? I'm going to just look at what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so I guess like why leave is like I started thinking about what I wanted to do in a very different way based on what I had learned at IGN. And I could definitely like keep applying those skills to IGN and do more cool stuff and make a lot of fun videos with my friends, which I still would love to do, but there came an opportunity again, like this was just handed to me. It was, hey.
Touched you, sorry. I'm handing myself to you as well.
Yeah, this job opportunity I have now that I still can't talk about, just like it fell into my lap as somebody being like, hey, do you want this? I was like, this is preposterous. Why do you want to give me this job? Okay, cool. Let's talk about this. And then, it's one of those things like you feel like you don't deserve it, but then you look at what you did to earn it and what you did to prove to people why you're the right person for the job. And it's like, oh, okay, no, I do feel good about this. And I do feel like I've sort of got skills that are worthwhile.
Do you? So you say you sort of do this. You do. Are you still every day trying to force yourself to believe in yourself on that one, right? Because like for me, look at me. Everything I've done right has been natural progression in a way, right? Sure. They give me up at noon, and I'm bad at up at noon, but I eventually get competent up at noon, and then start doing more YouTube stuff. You know what I mean? Then it's like, well, now I'm just gonna go off and do that. I'm just gonna be on video. Of course.
I think that might just be the professional pressure of like, okay, IGN is gonna do a lot of video. Greg, we'd like you to do a lot of video. Or like, hey, Mitch, read a news video for the first time ever with no script and having read the news story once. Memorize everything. Just do it. And it's like, man, this is like going back to my theater class. But instead of having a shitty performance on night one and feeling okay about day two, it's like, no, we just published it and 400,000 people watched it because you talked about Metal Gear Solid 5.
And they hate you.
And it's like, I'm so, like, I go back and watch old videos and it's like, man, it's painful.
Kids send me all the time the old video reviews. The Last Guy comes up a lot, and it's just like, yeesh. Because it was like, I remember vehemently being opposed to when they were like, we're going to change the way we do video reviews. Now you have to come in with a script. Because before it would be, all right, go. And we'd be like, all right, man, let me tell you about this game. This is cool. And this and that. And I just like 8 minutes of rambling with uhs and ahs. And like, they're just trying to find footage to apply to this.
Yeah. And then they give you write your own script and you're just like, today, the video games. It's like really hard to read a script and not sound boring.
Yeah.
So like one of my first video reviews that like really mattered, like one of my first big game reviews at IGN was Ninja Gaiden 3. Which I legendarily gave a 3.0, like which I still get shit about.
Oh no, really? The internet?
That game is not good.
Internet getting mad about video game reviews?
But I go back and I watch the video review, and I vividly remember how all this can be. It's like I played this game and I hated it, and I was just like sad having played this game for this long. And I wrote the script and I was burned out from just like playing it all day and writing all day. And like, it was all I was thinking about. And I was just bummed out about everything. So that was bad enough. But then I stayed home and was like, oh shit, I can't stay home. I'm sick today, but I have to go in.
Yeah.
Because I have to do this VO for this video review. And like, I'd never really done a VO for a video review. It was my first time really reading a script that I had written. And I was sick as hell. And the video review was awful. Like my VO is just awful. But then you look at something like, I don't know, like some video review I did recently, like the Walking Dead stuff that you and I did, or my Far Cry 4 review or whatever. Like, and that's way better. And I feel like those are good. And I feel like I've learned a lot. And you can definitely see how much I've learned and how much better I got at what I did. So I feel like no matter what job you're in, the pressure of, I have to do this. And if I don't do this, I will get fucking fired.
Sure.
I got to get better. I got to figure it out. And you talk to people around you and you talk to like your video producers and they typically have good advice about like, hey, you're really shitty at doing this thing. Don't do that. Instead, try this. And you try that and you go, oh, that works way better. And you just keep improving.
That's what's fascinating about you is like, I think to it now of just like, if I just wanted to stop right now and go be a baker. You know what I mean? Now, granted, like your job isn't as dramatic as a shift. But I mean, to hang up you're talking about like how good you are at the Walking Dead videos when we did the Walking Dead, how good you're doing right now on a podcast, right? Yeah. And I remember how bad I was at my first podcast, right? Like to kind of put that skill set aside in a way to go make this game.
Yeah, and it's a very different skill set, but there's also like parallels. There's stuff that I learned that it's like stuff you don't really talk about because it's just like behind the scenes stuff. Like, oh, I learned how to be a better professional person. I learned how to communicate better based on being in a professional environment in an office with a ton of people that rely on me and who I rely on. And that kind of stuff, you just sort of learn like, oh, I'm really good at spreadsheets. I'm really good at organizing shit. I'm really good
at IGN learn really quick if you're good at Excel or not.
Yeah, and then they make you do it for a long time. But I ended up like enjoying that stuff. And I enjoyed
great.
Like the sort of like production of IGN. And I enjoyed like overseeing an event, being like, okay, we're going to Tokyo this year and I have 5 people coming with me and we're all going to go do exactly this, and coming back and being like, all right, great job. Everyone did great. We had a really good show. And
we had a plan. We executed on it.
Yeah. And like we made money because we went to TGS. Like that feels really good to know that you were valuable to the company.
Sure. Yeah. The work you're doing matters.
Yeah.
All right. You want to answer some IGN questions before we jump topics?
Let's do it.
Of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be part of the show, go to kindoffunny.com/forums. Tim usually saves all the questions at the end, but I'm filtering them in because I believe in conversational podcasts.
Me too.
Whereas Tim believes in gulags, where we all sit here and just talk about whatever he wants to talk, whatever NX rumor.
Tim's not here.
Hate him. This one comes from Jake James Lugo. He says, here's a question for Mitch. What's the hardest thing you had to do while writing about games for IGN? Anything that pushed you to the limit and forced you to change up your approach to something? Was it something you wish you could have approached differently now than you did back then? Thanks a ton. Good luck on everything. I owe you a high five. Stay epic, Mitchie.
High five.
Jake James loves you.
Love you too. Man, I can't think of like a definitive like, oh, that was the hardest thing for sure. Like this stands out as the hard. There were just like really hard days where you're staying late and you're in the office with people and you're like, okay, well, we have this event that doesn't start till 7. We have to work till 5 anyway. We can't really go out at 6 to get food. Yeah. Because we don't have time. And you do like long nights at the office or at an event doing like live shows all day. And to be on video is like you watch someone like Greg on video, and Greg is very natural. He's very good at what he does, takes compliments really well. He's very humble. But then like
Colin bursts through the wall at any second right now to call it bullshit on everything.
But then like you see these people do this stuff all day. And then you stop doing that. You stop working and you're like, all right, let's just sit down and get dinner. And like you meet a different person than the person you see on video. Like people on video are a little bit different than they are in real life.
Sure. We always talk about it's amplified a bit, right?
Yeah, it's like an exaggerated version of yourself because you're trying to like, you're entertaining people and you're doing a fun thing. Keep it going.
Let's talk. Let's not be loose. Let's not mumble.
Yeah, and like we're here to have a good time. Like we're doing the show because we're having fun. Yeah. Whereas at dinner, it's like, well, we're just hanging out. Let's just be like more casual and not really worry about anything.
Take a breath in between our statements and sentences and everything else.
So, and the reason I bring up all this is like you're on all day, all fucking day. You're on video and you're just like, hey, what's up? And you're fast and you're excited and you're high energy. And that is fucking exhausting. That is so much more exhausting than you would ever imagine. Being on video is hard. And I look at somebody like Damon or Naomi at IGN. It's like, you do this all day and you have to be entertaining for people all day. Like, because people expect a certain version of you. And not to say it's a fake version. It's just like, amplified. They're used to seeing that person. And the minute Damon goes on to a live show and is like, hey, we're back. And Microsoft's press conference, like that's it. You're done. That's over. That's not interesting. It's not worth watching. You're doing a bad job. And you can't do that. So you work an event like E3 and you do that all day, and then you write previews all night after going to an open bar event. You know you shouldn't be going to the open bar, but you do because you had a really long day.
Because you're finally done for now.
But then you play all these games, you're like, shit, I didn't expect to have to write a Gears of War preview tonight. I didn't think that it'd be worth writing about Forza, but they had news. So you stay up till midnight writing news.
Yeah.
And then everyone wants to go out because it's E3. And you're like, I'm never going to see this person again.
Yep. If I don't talk to this person right now who's in town from Japan that I haven't seen in 5 years, I won't see them.
And obviously this is all a very big first world problem. It is like, we are so
100%.
fucking lucky to have had jobs that allowed us to go to E3 and see these people and talk to these people and go to these open bars and play these games. But it is draining.
Sure.
And I love E3, but it's like at a certain point by Friday, I'm just like, I need to just lie down.
Yeah.
I need to not do this. And like, I'd never expected coming into this job for it to be as like mentally and physically taxing as it is. And to then have to go into work on Monday and follow up on all of the stuff that we already covered and do more.
Yeah.
It's like, it's very demanding of your time and energy. And it's not like it's a bad thing, but that is just like a hard thing to deal with.
I mean, especially for you in news, you know what I mean? Like we dealt with that obviously as the PlayStation guys with the news teams and things start changing. But it was the thing like you never go to, it's never over.
No, like you came to me one night with like, we were at a company retreat.
Yeah.
And you came to me like, hey, I got a text about like a massive news story that's breaking. We need to do this.
The worst was always going to bed and then you check Twitter. Like, I checked Twitter and it was some PlayStation, whatever at the time. And it was like, all right, back out of bed, turn on the computer, figure this out.
Nintendo at 3 a.m. Like, son of a bitch. Like I know.
Why did I check my email? That was always the thing. Why did I even see this? Why did I have to see this?
Pro tip: never have your work email on your phone if you can avoid it. I'll always have it.
I remember thinking that was gonna be the coolest thing because I'm old enough to remember life before the iPhone. And I remember when I was going to sell my car and go the next day and buy an iPhone. And I was like, I'm going to be able to check email on my phone. This is going to be amazing. And it was, and still is.
It is.
But it is the thing of like now, I don't know. Once we started all this and I was talking about it at IGN, right? Like it was always, I always thought of myself as a goalie, right? And all these shots are coming out on net and I'm knocking them all down and I'm going out of my way. And like once in a while, someone will get past me and it's like, oh, that sucks. And then when we started this, it's just like, just standing to the side of the goal and they're just getting scored on nonstop. I'm like, I literally can't stop these. No. At some point, like I hadn't really done a thorough email go through in like a week because I was at the Final Fantasy thing to Rooster Teeth to Bachelor Party to Rooster Teeth to home to do this stuff.
Horrible to me. Like you guys do such a good job of what you do, but like that, like world tour is just like, I cannot imagine doing that. And because none of that is even like the real work. That's just getting to the work.
Well, our work changed. You know what I mean? That's the big thing is like I go to I went to Rooster Teeth on Friday and filmed some free play stuff that we're not talking about yet. Or I guess Thursday I did it.
Scoops.
And it's like, I did it and I was done. And I also just got to be talent, which is always like, so nice.
You
because
survive and be
when we're here and it's like I'm producing the show and tonight I will edit the show and now I'm hosting the show. Like
you're taking notes throughout.
Exactly. There's a lot of different moving parts to this.
Totally.
Whereas there when it's like, all right, do this, do that. All right, you're done. All right,
10
cool.
other people take care of that
exactly.
stuff for
You look around and somebody else does everything else. Like, fuck, that's great. But yeah, like, it's funny because I thought how I had no idea what we were getting into when we did this. I was like, we're gonna travel less. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, sure. So we do fun stuff, and like at IGN, it was fun, and we did a lot of really great work, and I love it. I love doing what we did, and like it was weird this week to not go in.
Oh, sure.
And like watch other people at IGN text me about stuff like, hey, let's go get coffee because I'm on a giant text thread with IGN people, and I'm like, oh, I can't go today. It's weird. And like I want to catch up and find out what everyone's doing and find out like how I can help them. And it's a strange feeling to come into this job going like, oh man, I'm going to just write about video games all day and play.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're going to do it like a real job, and it's going to be stressful like a real job. But it's also going to be really, really great, like a great job should be.
Brotherhood 93 piggybacks off Jake James Lugo. Says, what one piece of content are you most proud of for your time at IGN?
I wrote a 12,000 word, inspired by Colin Moriarty, I wrote a 12,000 word long form feature about Ubisoft Montreal. Like it's life's work, called House of Dreams, the Ubisoft Montreal story.
Gotcha.
And it's like starting in 1997 when the company started, and the Yannis Malott, who's the CEO of UB Montreal, and I think he runs Ubisoft Toronto now as well. He was like, yeah, we're starting the studio. We're going to do these like license games to cut our teeth. And like we hired 30 people and 15 of them didn't know how to make a video game. And we just figured it out. And then we made Prince of Persia: The Sounds of Fucking Time, like the greatest platformer action game of all time.
Yeah.
Is like, they didn't really know what they were doing. They just made one of the best things ever.
They stumbled into it.
Yeah, and it's like I talked to a ton of people who worked there. Some people talked to me like about the games they made. Other people talked to me like anonymously because they had information that like maybe they shouldn't have been talking about. Just for like insights into how the studio worked and why it is the way it is. And it's this gigantic feature that I loved writing. I worked on it for literally a year.
See,
straight.
That's the best stuff. Like when you get to actually sit down and get embedded with stuff and stories.
And you talk to people like, okay, you worked on Prince of Persia. Let's talk about that for a bit. Okay, that you worked on Splinter Cell like 10 years later. Let's talk about that. Okay, you mentioned something about this other game 8 years ago you worked on. I'm going to see if I can find that project lead to talk about how that came to be. And it's just like piecing this gigantic puzzle together is so satisfying.
Excellent. Everyone go read that. Give IGN the click. They don't give Mitch any more money. But.
That's true.
Rockin' Canadian, but Rawking, which I like. Rockin' Canadian says, hello, Mitch and Greg.
Hello, Rockin' Canadian.
Mitch, what is your favorite Greg story while at IGN? There's the ego for you.
Ooh, my favorite Greg story.
You can admit you didn't like me when we worked together. That's fine.
I just didn't know you. Like, you were doing your own thing, and like you just didn't have time to stop and be like, oh, it's the new guy, let's be best buds.
Sure.
Like, you were friendly, but it was like you just had other shit to worry about.
Yeah, that was a weird thing. I remember because like when I was talking about it, for me starting at IGN, when I started at IGN, young and crazy and stuff like that. And then you figure I got there and Damon had been there 6 months. I got there. Then in one fell swoop, we got Clements Gettys Gettys. And it's so hard because now I'm trained to go the opposite ways. When we hired Tim, everybody called him Gettys, and he's like, it's Gettys, you're killing me. Ryan Gettys, Ryan Clements, and Colin Moriarty.
Yeah.
And so when all those people came in, it was like, family, this is what we are. You know what I mean? When you roll. And when you came in, I got to see you do that with Goldfarb, and to an extent,
Sure.
when Marty, got over his one-upness, come over and be that.
Marty.
But yeah. If you don't have one, it's fine.
No, it's like really hard to find a
because
specific
now we're
moment.
close friends. Now we talk, we go places, we do things.
Yeah, it's true. And I just don't have like a ton of specific memories about like, remember that one time Greg did this, and I probably should.
No, you shouldn't. You had a life to live. You were doing your own stuff.
That's fine. I remember like one of the first moments where I was like, oh, Greg is really fucking good at what he does. Just continue stroking your ego a little bit. It was like, I think it was the first time I ever sat down to be like, oh, I have time today. You won an award.
I'm pointing at both my awards, actually.
Oh, look at that. That one's that wooden one's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I like
the
that
Yoshi.
a lot.
The Yoshi isn't usually. It looks like getting taken from behind by the award.
That's
I think
fine.
That's what Kevin set it up to look like today.
Whatever makes Yoshi happy.
Yeah, no, I'm not knocking it.
That's fine. I remember the first time I sat down to watch Up at Noon because I had missed like a bunch of episodes.
Thank God. You would not have this in person.
Yeah. Well, I just didn't have time, right? Like it was always like, hey, everyone, we need people to come watch Up at Noon. Who's available? It's
Yeah.
like I have 10 million things to do.
Yeah,
Absolutely not. But there was one day I was like, fuck everything. I'm going to watch Up at Noon. I want to see this. And it was like sitting with a live audience in our studio and watching the way you interviewed people in the way it was like, it was so natural. And it was like not the kind of interview I'm used to, which is like, how you made a sequel. How did you make it better? Cool. Now with the sequel, and it's like unrelated questions that are like sort of topic based, and it was really hard for me for a long time to like listen to an interview subject while not freaking the fuck out about what I was going to say next.
Yeah.
So I was always like notebook. They stopped talking, ask the next question.
Yep, exactly. Active listening is so difficult.
It's so hard, but like watching you on Up at Noon where you just went in, you sat down, and I was like, you got a notebook? What's going on? And you never had a notebook.
Yeah.
And you were always able to just be like, okay, cool, you said something interesting. Let's follow up on that. Okay, rewind to something I was talking about before. Like you just had a fucking understanding of who this person was and what they were saying.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's fucking awesome. I want to do that. And I started just not bringing my notebook to places.
Nice.
And I was like, I'm going to just listen. And if I run out of questions, I'll say like, all right, well, I'm good. Anything else?
Yeah, it's always just, is there anything we didn't touch on? Then they fill in the
anything
gap.
I didn't touch on, anything that you're really excited about that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah.
No? All right, we're done.
Yeah.
And that just made for way better interviews. It made me, and weirdly, it was like, that's how I learned to like make contacts, because people stopped seeing me as the press guy interviewing me and more like, oh, this is a person who like gives a shit about what I have to say.
Yeah.
And that was how I was able to like maintain a conversation after an interview without just going, okay, thank you for your time, and leaving.
Right. I got to go by.
Yeah. And it's like moments like that where you sit down and it's like, oh, Greg's really good at what he does. And like all these people are having an amazing time, like laughing out loud because the show is funny and it was really good. So that like, I can't remember like what episode it was, but I remember sitting in the studio and having that thought, like, oh, this is like going to change how I do this job forever.
Oh, good. Cool. See, that's the one thing I don't like about this show is that in every episode, no, not the notes part, because the notes are just the questions from the listeners.
True.
But like you were talking about things in the first part of Who is Mitch Dyer that I want to talk about, but I know they're in their bucket of the second topic.
Yeah.
So it's like,
sure.
I'm like, oh, I'd love to follow up on that right now and keep it conversational that way.
Sure.
But Tim fucked me.
Got to have some kind of structure.
I begged him, put the show up as one big topic. And he's like, no, breakouts.
Breakouts.
Breakouts. At least we're not like as breakout as we used to be. I remember during Beyond the old days, boxing things up.
I
I'm
still
writing
have to
time
do that. Are
codes.
we going to break this one out? Maybe I'll make
Not
it
that
out.
I'm knocking that, because
it
I
totally
can't tell you
works,
the number of
and it's
people who show up on our PS I Love You and like, when's the fucking topic start? This isn't. You guys talking about tacos in the beginning. Final question before we jump to number 2. Pepe Low, 14. Hi guys.
Hey.
2 questions for the two of you.
Okay.
How did you handle the business decisions, parentheses, layoffs, show cancellations or changes, promotions that affected you and your time at IGN? The second is kind of personal. Oh, that's where that was. I'm saving that because that was already going to be topic number 3.
Oh,
but
okay.
now it's got a little thing.
Of course, yeah.
All right, so
Good.
how did business decisions at IGN affect us?
Man, layoffs fucking suck.
They suck. They suck
It
dick.
sucks.
Yeah.
There were layoffs at IGN 1 month after I started, and I can't remember. And that was like around the time where Peter Eichemans, who was like amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Peter like had the opportunity to join IGN because there were so many layoffs, and he was like, "No, I'm gonna go do something else." And now he's making games at Congregate, and he's amazing. But we lost a bunch of people at once, and it was weird to be like, I've only been here a month, but man, I'm gonna miss the fuck out of Jack.
Yep.
And I'm gonna miss all of these people that like I didn't really know, but it sucks to see them upset that they just lost their job and they don't know what they're gonna do, and it's like real life stress in the moment. And you're like, well, this is hard. And it's like not a fun thing to deal with. Like, and there's no real thing you do to be like, how do you deal with it? I don't know. You just do.
You power through
You just
it,
try
yeah.
not to cry a lot.
Yeah. I only failed that once. When we laid off Clements, could not stop crying.
Oh my God.
It was over.
Oh my
and that
God.
was the thing for me. Like, how did the business decisions affect us? I can't speak for you. For me, and for layoffs and some of the stuff we're talking about here specifically, it was this weird battle of like, I understand the business and I understand what IGN's business model is, and I understand why they need to let these people go, and I understand why they're making these. There's only, I always talk about it, and I won't talk about it on air. Obviously, there's only one person who ever got laid off. Where I was like, why that person?
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. We need him.
Yes.
And the rest were like, this sucks. These are my, and this is where it gets into that business. I get it. But then there's the friendship family level where you're like, that is a family member.
Yep.
We can't do that. And I remember at one point, goddamn, and I forget how many times we were there, but when like we're addressing the IGN mission statement or whatever, you know what I mean? The values, and we wanted to put family on there. And so, and like the business guy in the room had to be like, I understand. And that's a lovely sentiment. It's not a family. You know what I mean? And it can't be. Otherwise, this doesn't work. And what do you do when something bad happens and you have to fight it?
Totally. Yeah, it's hard because you, at a place like that where it is very, like, it's so lame because everyone is always like, we're a family. It fucking is. It just is.
Yeah.
Like, I talk to everybody I know who has ever left IGN, still on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And not like about IGN, just because it's like, oh, you were here and I was here and now we're best friends forever. That exists.
We always come in at such a formative time. You know what I mean? It's a young man, woman's game. And you pop in and you start making those friendships and relying on each other and da-da-da-da. And then when somebody matures out of that role and leaves the nest again.
Leah Jackson was only at IGN for maybe a year. I think she was just about a year before she went to Riot Games. And like Leah moved away and that was it. But I still talk to Leah like all the time.
I was going to say, I think I talk to her more now.
Totally. And I totally forget what was the question?
How do these decisions affect us? How do you deal with it?
I mean, it sucks. Like if a show gets canceled, it gets canceled, and you just have to accept it. Like you can get mad about it, and you can go get drinks and complain about it with your coworkers. But it's like we always understand why stuff like this happens.
And that's the thing. It's back to the business versus family thing, where it's like, we're getting rid of this because it's not bringing in views or it's not getting sold. And you're like, okay, that sucks, but that's the realistic part.
That stuff, like that. Learning about the values of what is important to the business of IGN was something that I just went into it with literally no knowledge of. I had no expectations that I would ever need to know that. And I probably could have gotten away with, just kind of doing my job. But when I started thinking about like, okay, is this good for the business? Is this good for the readers? Is this good for us? Like you start thinking about how you do your job differently.
Sure.
And better, honestly. Like the business of what you do is never bad. Sometimes it's inconvenient, sometimes it's beneficial. It's just the nature of what you do. Sometimes things have to get done a certain way. They don't align with what you want to do creatively, man, and that sucks. But you deal with it and you move on.
Agreed. Mitch.
Yes, sir.
It's topic number 2. Kevin's on here. I gotta write down my own notes. I hate that.
That's
you know
fine.
what I mean? He's making me work for a living.
Kevin.
And this is gonna double back, like I was saying in the last topic, to stuff you said in that topic and all these different things. What is the state of video games journalism? You said something very interesting in the last topic.
Okay.
That was the first time you really felt like a journalist, like you were doing something there.
Yeah.
And then you work news and you made a reference to this game comes out on this day. This is where are we right now? Do you think is there games journalism happening? What does it all look like?
There will always be a place for the news, right? Like the act of a publisher making something and wanting the world to know about it, whether it's on their own sites or through the press, will exist for a long time.
Yeah.
They will always need to get that information, to communicate that information to the player. You will always want people to know your game is coming out, that you have a cool actor associated with it, that you've got cool plans, that you're going to have demo at PAX, whatever. That stuff will always be there. It's not the most fun stuff in the world to write, but it's necessary and people are excited about it, so you do it. It's also like a gateway to bigger things where it's like, oh, we know this thing about this game. Now we can write an opinion piece or a feature or follow-up interview, whatever. Like that is a gateway to do more with something.
Sure.
But there's also like actual amazing, awesome journalism in the industry right now. And I think Kotaku is doing the absolute best of it in the entire industry. Jason Schreier and Patrick Klepek are amazing.
Yeah, they're doing a great job.
Those guys do such different work than anybody else. Like those guys were constantly an inspiration for me. And anytime I got a good story, I was always just like, oh, like, is it as good as anything they've ever done? And the answer is usually no. Like, no matter how good I did, it's still like, man, like, Klepek is so, like, that dude is on another level, and I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
But he does it because he's been doing this for 15 years.
And it's what you were talking about in the last one, right? About the interviewing, where Patrick's a person. You know what I mean? Like, you know he cares about it. I could tell him anything off the record. Not that I'm saying my secrets are on that level, but I could tell him anything, and I trust him just like any other developer publisher would.
Yeah, and that's like... the best kind of journalist is somebody who isn't always in it for the story. Mm-hmm. Maybe like they interview somebody and they get off the record information, they hold that and they go like, oh, maybe I can use that later. But that's not why they're there. They are, doing their job and they're learning stuff and they're just kind of like soaking it in. And a really good journalist will soak stuff in and, when the time is appropriate, be able to tell a story that matters. And you're not going to just like, somebody tells you something off the record, you're going to blow it open now and ruin a relationship and maybe a contact and your reputation for one good story. And that's when you meet people, when I meet people, even to this day for the first time, and they start getting gun shy about it, I'm like, now it's easy because it's like, let me run you through all the things I knew about for months at a time and never ever said anything. Why would I blow it up for this? Yeah, and I think it's different across different websites, right? Like you see certain sites running things that I would at IGN never qualify as news. Like Phil Spencer tweeting his thoughts on something is not always news. Yeah. Phil Spencer congratulating PlayStation is not news. Like there are certain things that just don't matter. Sure. And Kotaku has always been really, really good at like, oh, they announced DLC release date. We don't care. Like we're going to pass on that because if it's not original or interesting or beneficial to somebody playing games or reading Kotaku, who cares? Don't waste your time. Spend that time doing better work. And that's why they do better work than a lot of other places online. Do you worry about their viability? And then also, I guess, just more people doing this, right? Because we're talking about it. And I think the list gets pretty short. We're going to talk about Jason, we're going to talk Patrick, and then we're going to start talking about, and it's like, there's people out there doing it, but the journalism is there in such a fashion where it is like, what you're talking about, like, all right, cool. This character's in the game. This is the DLC package. This is the release date, whatever. I'll put up that story and then I'll think about features about it. I'll think about interviews, but most people are just like, here it is. You know what I mean? And all these fan sites that are just putting up the same. It's just like, echo. And I don't know, like that's how I got my start. It was just like, oh, news happened. I'm going to write about it. Sure. And hopefully some people read it and some people notice it. But it's not until you start doing original work, whether that's like an opinion piece or a feature or whatever, something critical, something different, that you and your website's voice starts to stand out as distinct. Yeah. And the best websites are the ones that do that. Obviously, it's like if you have a perspective that is different than the publishers, now you have an interesting thought and you can say something crazy like Colin might, or you might say something super, super intelligent or astute that like nobody else is thinking about. You might compare somebody's business strategy to something else that does or doesn't work. And you can weigh all these things against each other to form an opinion and share a view with an audience that is interested in learning more because they care about whatever you're talking about, right? Like, somebody who's interested in Uncharted 4 is going to want to know certain things about it. And sometimes they don't know what they want. They know they want to know the release date. They know they want to see some gameplay footage. But then there might be stories about the making of that game that are super interesting and that they didn't know they wanted to know. Sure. So if you can kind of predict what people will be interested in, which is sort of the foundation of your business, then you can create something that people are going to gravitate toward and orbit around because it's a reliable, consistent, qualitative thing that is about things I care about. And that is like the definition of what a good games media, whether it's journalism or whatever, like that is what good games coverage is. Do you worry though that, I mean, is that,
gonna burn out in terms of like, here we're gonna do real journalism, we're gonna do real stories? Is that gonna burn out at the big .coms? Because my concern when I look at the big .coms, and I'm including everybody who's a big .com.
Do you mean like
go there,
IGN or like
yeah, I mean like
Weekly?
IGN. No, I'm talking about video games, GameSpot, IGN. You go there, and it is such a shotgun approach, and it is such big headlines that it does become that. I'm like, all I always talk about is how we work, like, right? And I always talk about it being the same boring, tired out, old fucking played out analogy, right? That I talk about with video game publishers, right, and developers, where it was like we have the AAA developers, we have the indie developers, and in the middle was these mid-tier guys who have fallen away. And I see that happening now, where it's like you have the big .coms and you have the little guys like us on YouTube, and then the middle tier people.
And then you see like Destructoid like losing a lot of people, and you see Joystick shutting down.
Yep, exactly. Those sites are starting to fall away. So then, for me, my concern is somebody who, like Colin, likes the written word, likes long form content, likes all these different things. Even though I'm fucking a hypocrite right there, because like I guess I read Kotaku stuff, that counts. I'm talking about when's the last time I sat down and read like a really long form, but then again, when's the last time somebody wrote something really long form and great? But I'm saying is, the .coms, here's a top 10 list, and here's this tweet from David Ayers about the Suicide Squad, and it's all these little things to the point that the way I always think of how we work in it is, oh man, IGN's review of Batman v Superman went up, or IGN has a new clip of Batman v Superman. I consume this news, this breakout. What did Greg think of it? And you go to your expert commentary, your expert person, your person you connect that with.
And I think there will always be a place for that. There will always be a place for critical thinking and expert analysis.
Yeah.
And that'll be the thing that differentiates any .com from its journalism kind of output. Like, I think to some degree, there will always be people willing to rewrite press releases. And whether or not that's sustainable is to be TBD. But as long as there are interesting voices surrounding things I care about, I'm always going to want to see that. I'm always going to want to read what Anthony Bresnikan has to say about Star Wars, because he's somebody I really connect with. Because he's at Entertainment Weekly, and it's a big website with like some serious fucking legitimacy, and he's passionate and he gets it, and he asks really good questions, and like I'm super into that. Anytime I see a Star Wars story on EW, I know it's going to be good. And it's also not just going to be like, today J.J. Abrams said the thing.
Sure.
That's not interesting. But when he starts digging into it and speculating about what any of it means, that's when I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's a really cool theory. This is a really cool question. He got this really great answer.
Do you see it being, though, that like, we were talking about this at lunch, right? This is what I always talk about, and maybe you don't share the opinion, but I always talk about the fact of like why I got so popular at IGN and why I was able to keep all that going, right? Is that for pretty much 8 years, I was able to focus on one beat. You know what I mean? I established myself as the PlayStation guy. And that, like, I always talk about it like I was, I'm sure in the comments of this very video, people are like, oh, this fucking PlayStation fanboy, right? But it's like, I'm not a fanboy. I just know that inside and out because that's my coverage. In the same way the Giants reporter isn't
You're
Giants
an anomaly,
fanboy.
though. Like, you're a person who, for lack of a better term, became a celebrity out of growing out of this massive website.
Sure.
And it's like a team, right? Like, growing up, I loved the Phoenix Coyotes when I watched hockey. And when Keith Tkachuk left the Phoenix Coyotes, I was devastated.
Big day for
Don't worry
everybody.
about it. When, whatever, bad analogy. I don't give a shit.
No, it's good. No, they understand that.
My favorite player left my favorite team, and I was like, holy shit, who do I follow? And you just end up following both. It's like, well, if I like this person, I'm going to continue following them. But I'm also like, I'm going to read EW if Anthony Bresnikan leaves.
Oh no, and I'm sorry. What I was driving with that point wasn't that personalities leaving the site collapsed the site.
Totally.
Okay.
But,
my thing is I think the day of an 8-year editor are gone. To where are you building it? Are you at IGN right now currently building, or in GameSpot and everybody else? This isn't me sizing them up.
Yeah.
Are you building it so that you understand that when X event happens, I need to go do that? And like with new people, like obviously if like fucking Nintendo shit happens, what does Pear think? What does Fran think? What does Brian think?
So I think that's kind of like the notion and the nature of Twitter and YouTube has sort of created this weird amalgam of like, I don't care who I hear from. I just want to search Uncharted 4 stuff on YouTube, and maybe I get Beyond, maybe I get Kind of Funny, maybe I get a random YouTuber, maybe I get some random guy responding to a trailer.
Sure.
The black hole of like just infinite amounts of people talking about stuff, it makes it harder to specialize. And I don't know what the future of media is with that regard, because you try to do things to differentiate from the rest of them, but it's really hard because there's just so many other people doing so much of the same stuff that to say something different, which is, like we said, super important. You have to say stuff that's different to prove to people that you're interesting, to make them want to stay with your site or with you or whatever. But I don't know if people care about the individual so much as they care about just any kind of insight from anyone. Like I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like the way I consume media is so much different than even the way like you watching this consume media. Like I don't have my kind of funny. I don't have a show that I go to. Like I have a couple podcasts. Like I listen to a Star Wars podcast that I really like, and I love listening to the Idle Thumbs guys, but I'm not there every week.
Right.
I'm not hunting down to like a thing I'm subscribed to on YouTube. Like people, especially people who are younger than me, consume content. I hate that word, so goddamn much content in a very
You got to get on board with it,
I know.
sir.
And it's
The first time somebody came up to me like 3 years ago to show and was like, "I love your content." I was like, "Wow!" Like I thought only nerds like me at VidCon talk that way. You're just a kid.
yeah. So like the audience, even the IGN audience, is evolving in a way that I don't understand.
And that's why it's such, because it's this whole thing is so fascinating, and we're cut from the same cloth. Is that we came in thinking we were going to do one job, and
I'm a writer. I'm going to go write about video.
I got hired. Yeah, exactly. And I got to live that dream for a long time, but a little time, and see it change. Where I'll never, like my early days at IGN, when like you got there those first, years, but I'm thinking like the first months, when it's like, all right, cool, you're gonna review this PSP game, great, and I just sat at my desk and played this PSP game for 5 hours, and it was like no one interrupted me. I didn't have to go on camera. I didn't have a podcast. You know what I mean? There weren't the things you're buried under now, and so like to see it all change and evolve gets me to this point where I'm like, I'm concerned because back to whoever the jerk is in the comments, right? There's a jerk in the comments like, "Oh, these two fuckboys talking about games journalism. Games journalism is dead or never even existed." And And I'm like, you're not 100% wrong. I'll never forget coming here with I have a degree in magazine journalism.
Yeah.
Hey, Roper, I wrote my first review. All right, cool, post it. Are you going to read it? Is there a copy editor? No, we don't do that. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like the way, not ethics in the terms of like horrible things, but in like the way, like I remember I talked about the Sierra trip they sent me on like my first 2 months there, where it was like, all right, we're going to send you to Palm Springs at this resort. It's a 3-day party. You're seeing 2 games. And I went through this 3-day thing, and I did like a total of 30 minutes of work of playing these 2 games.
And to me now, like, that sounds like such a massive fucking waste of time.
100%.
And like,
that's how different it is now. That shit does not happen.
Totally. And like the idea that like going on a free vacation for work, like that's an amazing idea. But I'm like, get me the fuck out of here. Like, don't even fly. Send me a disc. I forget. I don't want to go anywhere. It just happened
recently. I won't name names, but a company hit me up and like, hey, do you want to go? I think it was London. Do you want to go to London to play this game? And I'm like, fuck no. Hell no, I don't want to do that. And I desperately want to get to London, but I don't want to burn a week going to London to play one game.
Yeah.
And so my concern, this is all mixed in the same pot, and just one mix up.
Talking about 30 different things.
I know. But like, where does all this go? I always go back to the fact that we are such a young industry, and I'm talking about games in general. You know what I mean? That if you were to go back and look at movie criticism and movie journalism, entertainment journalism, right? I'm sure if in the first 30 years of that, people are getting scoffing at that as well, and all these different things. But it's had such a lineage to it. It gets to the point now that you understand that there's going to be a Roger Ebert style in-depth review. Yeah. Here's what it means. You can trust me, and then there is going to be the regurgitated press release that.
Yep.
Guess what? Channing Tatum has signed this thing to do this 4-picture deal.
That's fine. Like, I still, as somebody who just cares about the industry and the people in it and the news and the games and whatever, like I want to keep up on that as much as I can. Maybe I'll read games media less, and maybe I'll watch YouTube less because I'm preoccupied with doing different things.
Sure.
But I'm still really interested in like Avengers rumors, and I still really want to see the first image or first trailer from this movie, and I still want to see the trailer for whatever game. Like I'm still. That stuff is still interesting to me. The way I consume it is sort of like, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to let it come to me. And if it's Greg's video that hits me first, I'm going to watch it.
Of course.
And it's such a weird way to consume news.
Yeah, and that's the thing of like, I worry about the Jasons and the Patricks and the stuff that they're doing at Kotaku. Where does that live in this new world? Because if it becomes what the thing I'm talking about, where it's, you have your IGNs who are over here, and GameSpot, again, none of this is insulting anybody, I hope, or insulting to anybody, but they're over there doing top 10 list, big Batman v Superman rumor, here's a tweet, whatever.
Which doesn't mean, like, to clarify what you said about, to clarify your point about, like, not talking badly about anybody, it's just that it's different businesses.
Yeah.
Different companies require or mandate or get excited about different things, and that's it.
My scare, so anyways, so that's happening, and let's say, all the Gawker stuff pans out and Kotaku fades away or whatever, then who is doing that? Where does that go? Does it move away 100% from being written? Because I've seen Patrick toying around and I like him.
He's doing a lot of cool videos.
And I'm like, he's taking news stories and making them in videos. I'm like, this is very, very smart.
And I love that. It's smart. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is doing documentary style news videos.
And it's Patrick's way ahead of the game. Like Patrick, we're all going to work for Patrick one day is the problem.
And we're going to play his fucking Mario Maker
exactly.
levels.
Because like you go to this kid's YouTube channel and you're like, motherfucker, you're doing all this awesome news content and then all these awesome Let's Plays and fucking, God, I hate you. Or would you like to come work for Kinda Funny? Maybe one day we won't work in the spare bedroom. But that's, where does all that live and how does it go? And like, in the same way I'm talking about the fact that, you know, entertainment journalism, I think probably started in a similar fashion to what we're doing here and how all these growing pains as well. Are we growing or evolving in an unsustainable way where, because here's my nightmare scenario, and this is for all the big .coms. Was that Kevin or was that Colin?
I missed him. It's Colin.
Okay. If you see Kevin, let him know the light did weird things. Where my concern with the big .coms is that what you're saying, predicting what our audience wants.
Yeah.
And right now our audience wants this buzz style feed content, these funny GIF videos, these funny memes, these tweets.
Well, that's the thing is media has changed, like the expectations of what people want has changed so much. Like when I started at IGN, the wiki stuff was just becoming as massive as it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, why are you wasting our time on fucking guides? People already do guides. No, guides at IGN are massive. They're like 50% of the business.
Yeah.
That's hugely important. And I never would, like somebody was way ahead of the game, probably Mark Ryan, who was like, we need to be on top of this.
Probably.
And there are people way smarter than me that will continue to do that in media because, and like I was dumb. I was like, cool, I'll just write this thing and I'll do a video when someone tells me to and I'll think about what I would like to do. But there are people who are like, oh, this is the future of media, and it's people like Patrick who are way ahead of the curve.
And see that, and my fear for the .coms is that they're marching in the wrong direction, and it's going to snap back. Where it's going to be, okay, there's a better aggregator site, there's a better BuzzFeed, there's a better videogame.com or whatever, and it snaps back, and it's like the .coms, the GameSpots, the IGNs who their foundation was built on, when I was there, IGN, we review everything.
Yes.
Dunham was like, we're reviewing every fucking game, and we all wanted to kill ourselves.
Yep.
But it definitely worked, where it's like, the IGN was the place for video game reviews.
Yeah.
You knew that. So when it snaps back and suddenly it's like, all right, cool, I don't want the Angry Whopper video from an IGN. I am getting that from aggregator or whatever. I want to go see video game reviews. Are people going to still think to go there, or is it going to be, now it is this fractured, I'm going to go see my PlayStation coverage at a place like Kinda Funny, my Xbox coverage over there, my Nintendo stuff at Game Explain.
It's going to weirdly be driven by, I think, you know, that like, whatever the number is, like 16 to 35-year-olds or whatever, like whatever the major male audience is for all of this, like the majority audience.
Yeah.
Whatever they do next is going to dictate a lot of how every other .com, YouTube, or whatever responds. Because when I started doing this, YouTube was not a factor.
Yeah. Oh, God, no.
And you just weren't thinking about it. But you adapt. You're always in the media adapting to what everyone else is doing. And not even like what, IGN needs to change because GameSpot did this. It's, the audience is going here now. They're talking about Minecraft.
Yeah.
How can we do something there? Like, we did
every 6-month pair meeting.
Yeah.
How do we cover Minecraft? I'm like, I don't know, pair. Me and Brian will play it. We don't know what the fuck we're doing.
But it's a matter of like being nimble and improvisational.
Yeah.
The best in the media outlets that survive and thrive are the ones who are going to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean,
and I don't know who those are going to be. Like, I just really have no fucking idea.
Well, what's interesting, you know what I mean, is like IGN jumping on Snapchat. And like when they announced it, I was like,
it's fucking awesome.
I was like, is this a big deal? And then I was like, oh, it's a fucking huge deal.
I was so down on it. I was like, why Snapchat? Like, Snapchat is so dumb.
Right.
But it's like the tailored content that team makes for Snapchat is so fucking good.
Yeah.
And it's very digestible, and it fits the platform, and it fits the kind of person who uses it. Stop drawing on your hand.
I'm just scratching my
all
head.
right.
I like getting hand scratches and hand massages.
I'm down. I'm with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a tactic that like I never would have seen coming. And there are smarter people making better decisions than me.
And that's the thing of like, well, I remember even when we were leaving, I was like, you know, I still love IGN. I always will, and I'm gonna check IGN every day. Still, that's what I do every day. You know, and I don't check IGN ever. But it's because I don't check anything except Twitter ever.
Exactly.
What are the news? The curated list of people I follow that I trust their opinions of are saying this, and that's where I'll click off to go read Patrick's story, or Jeff's doing a bunch of cool VR demos. Let's go see that at Giant Bomb, or you know what I mean. You or not you, but formerly you put up this really intriguing story. I'd love to see it, and that's where you see the fact of like for the .coms, their homepage traffic is so down. It was, you know, IGN's was going down, I think, when we were there, and they talk about it openly and like how big mobile is and how big this is, and mainly how big it is to get your stuff out socially to bring people in. But then it does get me scared of like, how easy is it to get somebody in through the, through the window? Because I know how hard it is to get somebody to click a link, and that's not a joke. I mean, you know what I mean? You put a link in this video, this description, and you're looking at like an annotation in this video. It's like less than 1% are going to click that. So let alone to put out there and be like, we have a 35,000 word story about whatever. And you're like,
yeah, I wrote 12,000 words about a studio's 1997 origins.
Exactly.
Check it out. No fucking way. Yeah, I don't know. I think things will remain like at IGN, right? Like the biggest stories are always reviews, and it's always entertainment stuff. Like his entertainment stuff is blowing up because people who care about games care about the Avengers. People who care about the Avengers don't necessarily care about Far Cry Primal review.
Sure.
But both of those things do really, really well, and they do way better than the opinion piece that I wrote. So I say that like the most interesting content is where the people are going to thrive the most, and that's probably not true right now. But I don't know, like if somehow this all bottoms out because everyone's doing the exact same thing, it's going to be the differentiators like Patrick and Jason and the Giant Bomb guys are doing a lot of really great stuff, especially in video, things like that. Like those are going to be the kind of premium pieces of content that you seek out when you're like, oh, like I want to see a cool thing about a game. What did Giant Bomb say?
Well, and that's what's fascinating, I think, now. And the more as I continue to talk about it, and I think as you see it, like it starts falling away where you're AAA or indie or whatever. Like, and I'm not at all cursing them, but let's say the Gawker stuff goes badly, Kotaku does fold or whatever, right? Patrick, I could easily see going, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to make a Patreon, and I'm going to have this dedicated audience that supports me just like you guys support us, that we can then make content that gets out to as a billboard to more people to come in to see this. And like,
that also gives him the freedom to sell certain content to certain places. Like if he has a really great story and Entertainment Weekly wants it, then he can do that.
Yeah. It's fascinating, video games.
Games media is so weird. Like it's so, I don't know, man. It's like putting water in a bowl. You just like shake it up. It's like it's different every
the way
time.
It's changed. You know what I mean? To think of like what I was hired to do a little less than a decade ago. You know what I mean? To come in and all right, I remember being I have a PS2 and a debug PS2 at my desk and a PSP and this PS3 and you know what I mean? Like all these little tools there that were just like, I'm gonna sit there and play this and that's what it's gonna be.
Yep.
And then all that shit slowly evolved into being how crazy it is where you're playing at home and not doing anything else.
Yeah, because the job expectations change with the expectations of the audience, and those are constantly evolving. And you just have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Before we go to topic 3, would you like more water?
Yeah, I was thinking about it.
I'm going to get you more water.
Thanks, man.
Did you take it out of the thingamajig or did you take it out of the faucet?
I refilled the thingamajig.
Okay,
so
cool.
now there's thingamajig water.
While I do this, you pimp your stuff and whatever you want to pimp. Just so I keep saying stuff for people to go do. And
all right.
Just
all right. I'll fill the air with some stuff. So as the video may have already showed, I am at Mitchy D on Twitter. That's kind of all I'm doing right now. Just tweeting some stuff. Just doing some stuff. I'm on Twitch at Mitchy D. Not at symbol, just my Twitch is Mitchy D, twitch.tv/Mitchy D. Trying to stream more Dota 2 lately. That's a fun video game that a lot of people like. No, just me and my friends. No, like 12 million people play that game. People always say, people like Colin Moriarty, that MOBAs are stupid. MOBAs are not stupid. MOBAs are too smart for Colin Moriarty and his people. That is a brilliant genre, and actually I think we are going to talk about it in a little bit, so we'll talk about that. Been playing some Dark Souls 3 lately. Speaking of which, I just see a copy right over there, so I'm reminded. The game's hard as hell, but it's so fucking good. And it is like way back to the like more in line with the original Dark Souls, thank you. I'm just talking to the kids.
You had the Tiger Cup?
Yeah. I'm just talking to the kids about Dark Souls 3 and how it's like, yeah, I know, I saw that copy. Listen, is anyone going to play that? Nobody at this house plays Xbox.
Oh, no. Do you not have a copy?
I don't have a copy.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You're the prize box winner.
Yeah!
No, they sent us a PS3 and an Xbox One. I was like, okay, that's funny.
Thanks.
Right into the library of kind of funny and right into the
Alexa
giveaway
got
pile.
it on PS4, so I've been playing it. And I don't have one for me when I move. Thank you.
You can do that. It's your goodbye present from us. It's kind of funny.
I love
And
this game
Namco
already
Bandai.
because it's like Dark Souls 1 was so good at having like cavernous depth in every area where it's like, I'm going to roll through this box and accidentally found a shortcut that goes down into this totally new area with boss that like is totally optional. Dark Souls 2 had none of that, and I was so disappointed in it. So Dark Souls 3, I'm still like 3 hours in. Fucking love it. It's so good.
Okay, cool.
I was telling Colin earlier, like I hope, like Colin and I were talking about how few games we play compared to how many we used to.
Yeah.
Because the significance of so many games, not to diminish their quality in any way, but they just feel like unnecessary. Like I jokingly used to measure the worth of other games and the amount of time I could play Dota 2 instead. And now that's like a legitimate thing because
No, I hear you.
Or I could like, okay, I could play this game that's probably pretty cool, but I'm not going to finish it. And if I don't finish it, I'll feel like it wasn't worth it. So I'll just read a book or I'll just play 5 games of Dota 2, which will guaranteed give me a 10 out of 10 experience with 4 other friends. And I'll have a great time.
That's where it falls into like the Division's the first game in a while, probably since DC Universe Online, where it's like, fuck, I should be playing other things, but I'm going to keep playing this.
I know Destiny for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So it's exactly where, and it's like, I have 2 hours to kill right now, and I would love to start Republic on PS4. I'd love to get into Enter the Gungeon on PS4.
Republic is fucking awesome.
And I know, and that's the thing is, I already know it's great, and I'm anxious to play it. But it's like Quantum Break. I have 2 hours right now,
really cool.
and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just get into something I already know, because I don't want to do tutorial and learning how to play and what is this, and then when am I going to get back
That's
to it?
That's so fucking cool, like, and weird. Like, what does it say about us that we're the kind of people that demand innovation and cool new stuff in games, but we're totally happy to just revert to the stuff that we're comfortable with?
I mean, it's part of the investment, though, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not that I don't think the Division is not doing anything new. It's, I mean, for me, like Destiny, I jumped into and I enjoyed where it was going, all these different things, but I didn't get the bug. You know what I mean? And so I was very much on the outside of the window a lot of times going, oh, I'm glad you guys are having so much fun.
Fun in there.
I would love to.
Anybody want to come out and play?
Yeah, you know what I mean? But like, now that I'm on the inside of that, and granted, I'm not on the inside, like, you know, I just hit level 30 last night. Ty and I were playing, and it's like, great. And we had one of Fran's friends, Arcane, on helping us out, just getting through this thing or whatever. And he's like talking another language, which is like, to that point, it's like, ooh, I almost wish you weren't here, because now you're terrifying me to an extent of like, how many more millions of hours do I have to put in to see what you're talking about? But I'm excited to be there and do that now. How long? Like, I keep harkening back to this, that it's my first weekend and my only weekend in April home, where I'm not doing a trip or on something, and so I'm just gonna play games on something like drugs, where I'm gonna have time to play. So it's like, I know I'm gonna play. I'm like, this is what I was talking about earlier too, is to the point we're making. People are like, in the reviews, I didn't read them all because I don't want to have it spoiled, but I'm catching people being jerks about stuff or being nice about stuff or whatever. And Quantum Break's only 5.5 hours. I got through it in 6 hours, whatever. Blah.
Game took me 12 hours. What are you talking about?
Oh, perfect. Good. Well, some people are just, maybe they're skipping all the things or whatever.
Maybe.
But when I heard that, my reaction was like, oh, cool. I'm going to be able to play that and something else this weekend.
Somebody was like, Firewatch is only 2 hours. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm going to play that game 3 times. It's awesome.
Yeah. Games are fun, but we've gotten to a different place with them. We're old men now.
Yeah, like I still convince myself, I'll totally play Dragon Age Inquisition someday. And like, I love that franchise. I have the History of Thetis book. Yeah. Where I'm reading it and I'm like obsessed with the Kunari, and I love the lore of that world, and I love the story of its like ancient gods and history, and like, I love it. And I'm not super into fantasy stuff, so it's really interesting that like I really love it because it stands out as like, oh, this is the fantasy thing that I love. Yeah. But Inquisition is so alarmingly big that I'm like, I really want to play it, and I've played the first 6 hours before, and I loved it. I can't wait to do it. But man, it's just like, I fear so much that I'm just going to fall off and not finish, and it'll be like, man, why did I do that? Like, I knew I wasn't going to finish it. Why did I start? But also like, man, what if this is my new thing? What if I play 200 hours of Dragon Age? Yep. Both of those things are terrifying. I don't know how to make that choice. So I didn't do it. Same with The Witcher 3. See, Witcher 3 was one I was about to bring up. Phenomenal game that I will love, and I will play obsessively, but I'm scared of that. Yeah. So I don't do it. That's why I never played WoW. I played 26 hours of Witcher 3, had a great time, not even on Act 1. And it's like, I put it down for Arkham Knight, which became Metal Gear, which became, Fallout, which became, like, you can just see the thing, and it's like, there was a weekend where I popped it back in, I'm like, oh, finally something, and I popped in, I'm like, where the fuck am I? What the fuck am I doing? And it's like, it's not even the same experience anymore. You know what I mean? I'm not lost in that world. And so it's like, well, I'm never going to have that chance. RPGs are especially bad for that. Yeah, that's my terrifying thought for Persona 5. When Persona 5 comes out, I'm just going to shut everything else. Just playing Persona 5. Take time off and make sure I can. Cannot wait. I love Persona 5. Me too. I hope. No, we will. Okay. They can't screw it up, right? No, it's impossible. No, exactly. They're like the Zack Snyder of video games. They can't screw it up. Next topic. And that could have been it, but I was like, you know what? We'll just put that in there as a long thing. Yeah, who cares? Everybody loves this. What I want to talk about is love blooming on the battlefield. Love in the games industry. Yeah. You are in a relationship with this Alexa Ray Cornea, I believe is how you pronounce it. Korea, as in the country. No, as in the eyeball. No? There's no N in the middle. Korea. Corriea. Korea. Okay. That is not even... No, I know how to say her name. This is all for the visual gag. That's the visual gag. I thought you were literally writing a note. I'm like, that's gibberish, sir. Your penmanship is atrocious. I want to talk to you about this. I date Christine Steimer, also in the video game industry. I met her at IGN. When you set off to do this, when you started falling in love with her, what was that like? I mean, you're dating someone in the industry. Did you ever think you would? Did you ever think you didn't want to do that? Did you ever, like, were there those kind of loaded questions? I was always... Jesus Christ, Greg, relax. I always told myself that I would avoid 2 specific things in any relationship. So, well, 3 things. So I was always like, I never understood like I need a gamer girl. Like I don't give a shit. Like do your own, like do what makes you happy. If that's cool,
Do you?
Yeah, like and like I never expected anyone to be like, oh, I love games because you love games and we're gonna love games. It's like, I don't care. Just don't get mad at me because I play Dota. That's it.
Sure.
That's all I require. I also never wanted to date anybody primarily at IGN and definitely not somebody in the industry. Because it's just like there's too many close friends, mutual friends, like professional compromises you need to make or whatever. I definitely did not want to do long distance. And I have absolutely done most of those things. Like Alexa is, when I was at IGN, primary competitor at GameSpot.
Yeah.
Worked at Polygon when we started dating. Lived in New York. I lived in San Francisco. I am now moving to Montreal and she's staying in San Francisco. So like this is our second time doing long distance after we were like, oh, finally, we don't have to do long distance anymore. That was terrible. Let's never do that. Let's do long distance.
How long was long distance the first time?
Almost a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And now it's indefinite.
And we were bad at it because long distance is hard.
Long distance sucks, yeah.
It is real hard to like, oh, let's be on the phone, but I'm busy right now and you're busy later and I got to eat and shit. Like, we got to figure something out. Like, you have to schedule, like, it's weird because, like, when you're in the same city or the same apartment as somebody, you just go home and, like, oh, cool, this is our lives together always. Yep. Now it's like, I need to literally schedule time to talk to you. It's fucking crazy.
And then you feel like you have to have something to talk about.
Yeah, and like sometimes you don't.
Yep.
And like I'm super comfortable just sitting on the phone and not talking for a long period of time. And some people aren't, and some people are. And like, I don't know, like if you're in a good relationship, you figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with, Christine just moved to LA at the beginning of the year or whatever, and us getting into that rhythm of how this works and how it is. But it's like, it is that thing of like, man, I love her and she's the best. She's my best friend and da-da-da.
Yeah.
But like, what did you do today? I'm like, same
Colin
and Greg live. We yelled at Kevin. This thing didn't go well, and Nick got real mad, and then I got real mad, and then we did a podcast, and now I'm exhausted, and I just ate, and I feel like I have about 30 minutes to game before I'm gonna fall asleep. So can we stop talking?
Yeah.
And luckily she gets that.
Well,
you know what I mean?
So Christine's also in a unique position that like I'm about to be in, which is like, what did you do today? Literally cannot tell you. Like, I signed scary NDAs, and we cannot talk about it.
Yeah.
So like
exactly.
now I need to improvise, and be like, well, I had a really good conversation with this person, then we had a really cool lunch at this place. How about you?
Yeah. And she's like, I can't tell you anything I saw either.
Let's avoid. I hate talking about work.
Sure.
Outside of work.
So that's what's fascinating for me, and especially with your relationship. So it's a bit of a Romeo and Juliet in terms of like Montagues and Capulets or whatever. Like you were, and I think you, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of got hired after the rah IGN fuck GameSpot, because there was a time when it was that where it was like I think GameSpot people weren't allowed to talk to IGN people at events, and we were always like, we got to crush them and because when I was there, it came from behind at one point. Like,
when I was freelancing and I was at events, it was very clear to me that like GameSpot people existed over here, IGN people existed over here, and you could talk to one of them, but it was never like it was so weird to me, like, why aren't these people social? Because as a freelancer, I try to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
And when I started, it was like our group of people talked to fucking everyone at events. And it was like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Like, people didn't really do this. So it was like, I caught the tail end of that.
So was it weird?
IGN.
Like because you were already dating when she took that job. So was that a conversation?
She was at Polygon when we started dating. And it was like, nobody brought it, like, they were like, haha, the enemy, haha. But it was like, that was it. Nobody mentioned us to like, yay, the demise of our enemies. Like that attitude didn't really exist.
Okay.
Thankfully.
Yeah. Did you have to have a conversation with anybody?
No.
Okay, good.
It's one of those things like you really, are you gonna tell me I can't? Like,
all right, luck. Dad. Well, I remember like when Steimer and I started dating, she was working at IGN. And like,
well, that's like a HR thing. You're like,
and that was the thing. I remember I was in Tokyo and I walked over. We were there for TGS, and it was like, all right, we've been dating long enough. This is like an official thing. I should tell Tal. And I walked over, knocked on Tal's door, and came in. He's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, Christy and I are dating. He's like, okay. I'm like, do we have to sign anything HR? He's like, no, neither are your bosses. What do we care? I'm like, all right, see ya, bye.
Pretty much.
Like, he didn't care. He text back there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing we talked about was like, because there were like when she was transitioning out of Polygon to try to come out here, like she was talking to IGN, she was talking to GameSpot, she was talking to whoever else she was talking to, and she was like really, really excited about Spot, and that's where she ended up, obviously.
Yeah.
But there were moments where it's like, shit, if you come to IGN, like we'll be in the same office all day, we'll be seeing each other.
Right.
Someday you might work for me, or I might work for you, and it's like those conversations start getting weird.
Oh yeah.
It's like we need to think about like what are our careers if we work at the same company, or like if you're a direct competitor. how does that work? Like, how do we talk to each other at events? Like,
What did you decide? Like, how did that did that get weird? Did you come home and like,
no, because
was it everything's on the table, or was it, we're not going to talk about what happened here behind closed doors?
I just never really talked about it because neither of us really cared. It wasn't like she was like, okay, what did you learn today? What secrets
and you could just be like, I don't know anything about Final Fantasy. She's like, all right, cool. Thanks. Don't care.
No, we just led normal lives. Like after hours, it was like, okay, cool. Let's like go to a bar and see our friends and go home and watch Netflix and like do regular things. Like,
sure.
The video game industry people that we were just vanished. It was like, no, we're just human beings now.
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, I tried to like, I don't know. I'm not super thrilled to talk about work outside of work most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we worked all day, and now let's go to a bar, and everyone's going to complain about work. I'm like, just stop talking.
Yeah, you know, it's...
Or like, don't talk about the thing we did all day that was awesome. I was there. We don't need to, like, let's just talk about our lives and other cool things, and like, I don't know.
When Christy and I worked together, like, and lived together, and were dating the first time, because we broke up for a year, like, that was what led it to it, is the fact that we couldn't get out of that cycle, where be that we would be, our relationship was founded on aim, like IMing each other at work or whatever.
Like flirtatious
totally.
IMs all day.
And then she wasn't sure if they were real. So then when I took her on the first date and I was like, I'll pay for this. It's a date. She goes, is it? I was like, oh no. But she also did this really cute thing where she was in the old IGN office where we had the giant desks. She was on the other side of it. Or like I was in here and then she's a row over, so I couldn't see her though. But I would write jokes to her or whatever, whenever I'd say, because I'm a real funny guy. And she'd literally laugh out loud and then she'd write lol. And I'd be like, I can hear you. Like, but it's also adorable because when I write lol, it's just like, like, oh, that was funny. I don't know. Anyways,
but, I only write lol when I lull.
You only, but that was the thing, is like you got into that rhythm of we would IM all day about something that was happening at work, then talk about it on the walk home from work, and then eat and talk about it, and then you know, it's like, oh my god, like this is a nightmare.
So Alexa and I, we knew each other because like, oh, you're that Polygon girl, you're that IGN guy. Okay, we met at an event like playing Titanfall together. Yeah, and it was like after a PAX thing. It was like the after hours fight club with with the Respawn team. So we just played a bunch of Titanfall and we were like, haha, fuck this AI person who sucks, haha. I have a nice life. And we didn't talk for a long time after that. But it was like Goldfarb went to New York for a work trip and they got drinks. And she was like, oh my God, I just started Buffy. And he's like, I don't care. You start Mitch. Mitch loves Buffy. Here's his number. And we just talked about Buffy. And everything we ever talked about.
Wait, so she just called you out of the blue one day? Or
yeah, it was like, hey,
you?
it's Alexa. I love Buffy. Oh my God, I'm in season 1 and it's weird and it's cool. What do you... And we just started bullshitting about this show. And it was like a year later, we started dating. It was like nothing, like we never had this flirtatious relationship before that. It wasn't like, oh, this is all going somewhere.
Sure.
It was just like, oh, it's that Polygon girl talking about Buffy. This is great. I love Buffy. And we bullshitted about other TV shows and games we were playing. And it was just like texting a friend. So we never really had the like industry person association. It was just like, oh, this is this cool person that I know. Oh, they're coming to San Francisco to hang out. Cool. Let's hang out. So suddenly we're dating.
I was going to say, when did you notice you were going from just being industry friends to
She came out for a GDC and we just started like hanging out. Like I was like, oh, cool, you're coming. Like I'll come out to East Bay and hang out with you and like the people you're staying with.
Sure.
And because we were all mutual friends and shit. And it was like, we just spent a whole bunch of time together and it was like, oh, I think this girl's super fucking cool. Anne-Maurice, do you think she thinks I'm super fucking cool? And we just ended up going out a bunch and like we had a friend, so we were like, oh, we're all gonna go out and get dinner one night, and then everybody like coordinated to bail on us.
You're at a table for 12, just you two. You're like,
exactly.
wow.
And we're like, shit, I guess it's just us because like XYZ bailed. Oh, so did ABC. Shit, it's just us. And we just like, we're like, oh fuck, this is accidentally a date. And it's going really well because we weren't thinking about it being a date, so there's no pressure. Yeah, and it was just like, oh, like you and I click really well because we have a good rapport based on texting for a year about bullshit.
Sure.
And none of it was like, oh, let's complain about our jobs or talk about the things we love doing at our jobs.
Let me tell you what I hate about you as a competitor.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. We just never really talked about that because I didn't really care. Like I don't care what Polygon's opinion of IGN is.
True. You shouldn't. Nobody should care about what the other opinion are. Because if you're sitting there gossiping like that, go fuck yourself. Who cares?
Just do your fucking job.
I only care what Boogie thinks of me, and that's it. So, I guess then, what about this move, this change? You're going back to long distance, and like you know you're bad at it, and you know it sucks. Like, how much does that weigh on both of you?
We were bad at it, and the thing I think now is like we were bad at it when we were figuring out what the relationship was.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, we're in love, and we've been together for 2 years, and like it's gonna be hard and it's gonna suck because long distance fucking sucks. And like if you can avoid it, recommend you do so. But it's like, oh, like I love this person and I care enough about them that I'm willing to have this like strained relationship where I'm far away and you're far away, but like I care about you enough that we're going to do this, because I would rather be in a relationship with you and far away than in a relationship with somebody else close. Which, I don't know, like I think that says a lot. Like you and Christine staying together is fucking awesome. Like I love that. And it sucks for you guys, but it's still me going like, yeah, that's the shit. Good job, guys. Like I appreciate and respect the hell out of that.
Thank you.
So now we're like, okay, we were bad at long distance. We're totally different people than we were then.
Sure.
Like it's been 2 years since we were like, I think I like you and this is hard and call me. And now it's like we spend every fucking day together and we cook dinners together every night. And it sucks that we're not gonna be able to do that. But at the same time, like she can just like throw open her laptop, throw on FaceTime and call me and she'll cook dinner and we'll just talk.
Good point. Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. I used to think it was like, that was such a half measure for a relationship, but it's really not. Like talking to somebody is talking to somebody, and it's not as great if they aren't in the same room, but it works and it's good. And it's like, that is how you connect to a person, whether it's somebody you're in a relationship with or somebody you're just like, oh, I haven't talked to my mom in a while. I'll FaceTime them.
Right.
Like it's about maintaining that relationship and being like, oh, like you need support, call me.
It's one of those two for me that I think it mixes the sweet with the sour in a way. You know what I mean? In the way that like when I'm sad or depressed, which happens once in a while, it's like it's worse because it's just me and Porty or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't want to call Christine Barker down. But then when we're together, like all of a sudden that's, you know, because we lived together for forever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it totally was one of those like, you know, I became a Guild Wars 2 widower here, where it'd be like, I'd come home, she'd go play, I'd cook dinner, she'd come out and eat as fast as she could, and then run back to her dungeon. And it's like, it was awesome and fine, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But we did shit like that all the time where we took each other's time for granted. Sure. That we were in the same room and I'd sit out here and watch something or she'd play something or vice versa. And we, you know, we didn't really talk. So now to sit down and really talk is different. Yeah. To go, like, you know, she came up for GDC and then we went to South by together, and like to have each other around for those things, those occasions, those parties, it's different than when it would be a random, I'm going to go do this, you know, IGN bar goodbye thing. You want to come? No, I'm good. All right, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's going to be like, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff like, because we have a lot of mutual friends, so now it's going to be hard for me to like, oh, you're going out tonight. Cool. You should totally go like hang out with Marty and then send me a million pictures and make me really sad.
Right.
No, like that kind of thing sucks, but it's also like, I miss this and I want you to go have that good time, even though I'm jealous I can't be there.
Yeah, no, that was the thing over the weekend. Christine went to a friend's birthday party down in LA, and it's like totally one of those I would never miss this, except that it's Scott Lowe's bachelor party. You know what I mean? And so I had to tell her to stop sending photos. I'm like, hey, I love everything that's happening here. It's breaking my heart not to be there with you on your arm to see all this and celebrate this person. You know what I mean? You got to stop right there. And those are the, you know, the boundaries and I think you find to test it all out.
Yeah, I don't know. We had it's interesting because like you mentioned, like when you're depressed, you go to her for support. We have this interesting conundrum where when I'm bummed out, like when I get hit with a wave of depression, I'm like, leave me the fuck alone. Like I just want to be alone. I want to read a book in a quiet room alone. And obviously, because Alexa is a caring person, she's like, what can I do to help? And I'm like,
get the fuck away from me.
Literally nothing. Like this will pass. It's fine. Like the fact that you care enough to ask is more than enough. Yeah. I'm good. Thank you. Whereas when she gets upset, it's like, I have the same thing where I'm like, how can I help? She's like, just sit with me. Just spend time with me.
Yeah.
So we have the opposite issue.
Interesting.
And now that I'm moving away, it's like, well, if I get upset, I'm good.
Great. Yeah.
Problem is solved. But if she's hurting, I'm like, fuck, I can't do anything. Like I am so helpless to be able to support you when you need me. Like that feeling sucks.
Yeah. How much of a discussion was it? Were you talking about this sounds horrible, but letting the relationship get in the way of this goal, this job, this kind of next dream that's being handed to you?
We talked about a lot of hypotheticals, right? Like what if we just stopped dating?
Time and I did the same thing.
And it's like, that's a shitty conversation to have, and neither of us wanted it. And we're like, okay, well, like, what do we want? This. Okay, so we agree. Then we're staying together. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But like, you have to weigh the options and figure out like, what is best for everyone here? How do we, like, is ripping off the Band-Aid better for everyone? We both agree no. Great, let's not do that.
Yeah.
And you just have to be like, you have to in any relationship be super fucking transparent about that kind of stuff. Because like, if I said, hey, would this be easier for you if we just stopped dating altogether? And if her answer was like, yeah, honestly, like I really don't want to do long distance and it would be really painful to be in a relationship while you're not here. Okay. Then that's like, that fucking sucks for a million reasons, but like, that's best for you. Let's do that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we both kind of came to the decision of like, hey, I care about you and I love you a lot. I would rather try this and just totally fuck it up and ruin everything.
That's what we did.
Then say, you know what? We had a good run. Let's throw in the towel and not worry about what might have been.
Yeah.
I would rather stay with it and go like, oh, I fucked up. I was a bad boyfriend and now, okay.
Yeah.
I would rather.
At least you know. You know what I mean? It says so what we always talk about with Kind of Funny, where we could there was those discussions of like, maybe we don't jump now, but if we don't jump now, we're going to always sit here and go, what if we had jumped now?
Yeah, and it's always about accountability, like being responsible for your own life and having control over your own life and compromising that with somebody else's wants and needs. That's like, if you can find a happy compromise that makes both people happy, you've done a good job with your relationship. And sometimes it's really fucking hard and sometimes there is no compromise. But thankfully, she's awesome and understanding and totally excited about my new job and encourages me to do it. And we're just like, yeah, like this is so important to me to do this. And you super understand that we're just going to figure it out.
Yeah. Were games a big part of your relationship here? Like, no?
No. We've played some stuff together. Like we played through Firewatch together and we played through Oxenfree and we played some games we were reviewing at the same time together, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, like every Friday we sit down and we have a co-op game. Like we just didn't do that because like games were our job. So we came home, we're like, let's do anything else. Like let's sit in the living room silently and eat an amazing dinner that we cooked together and read. Never talk. Or let's sit and watch Netflix shows for 16 hours on a Saturday. Or let's go out on a date and not talk about work or video games. Like games are such a huge, major, important part of my life, but they are not an important part of my relationship at all in any capacity, whether it's work or personal or whatever. And sometimes it'll come up where I'm like, oh, yeah, like how was the Final Fantasy event? Like tell me all about this work trip you went on for this game you're excited about. And that becomes a like excited point of conversation or whatever. But
you should talk about us, how good we were.
Of course.
Thank you.
But it's never like I don't know, every now and then she'll ask me like, how are the Dota games last night? And I'm like, yeah, they were fun. Like it's not, the question is not really about the game because she doesn't give a shit about Dota 2. She's like, how was your evening with, like, oh, it's great. I got to hang out with Jay and Brian and Miranda and they all said hello and we had a really good time. We cracked some jokes. I caught up with some friends on the East Coast. It was great. Cool. And that becomes the conversation rather than like, let's talk about our experiences with video games. Like, we don't do we both reviewed a game. Let's have an analytical conversation. Sure. We just don't care.
Yeah. Like that's the one thing like Steimer and I need, like it wasn't every weekend for sure, but there was a lot of co-op gaming where it's like, let's move the other let's have the two screens set up. And we like, when she came up this last trip, I re-rolled a Division character, a true sign of love, so that I could play with her. Because why the fuck would you, of course, Division developers make a way for people to play with their high level characters with the lower level character? Why would anybody want that? No,
it's fine. It's not like that's been a problem since Diablo 2.
It's not like a million games have solved it like Guild Wars 2. It doesn't matter at all. No, nobody should have thought that through.
No, that's the thing is like now maybe that does become part of our lives. Maybe that is a really good way that we can like do stuff together, because like you can go out on dates and you can go out with friends and you can go home and watch Netflix and that's doing something together. We can't do things together in different places. We can talk on Skype, we can talk on FaceTime, whatever, but the act of like, oh, we did that together doesn't really exist, and games are a really fucking great way to do that. So maybe that'll change. Maybe that's something we do more of.
Make her play the Dotas. There you go.
No, she won't. No,
lost cause.
I would never do that to her.
Topic number 4, Mitch.
Yes, sir.
As always, comes from the community over at kindoffunny.com/forums, where I posted that you were coming on the show, and they posted a bunch of questions. Speaking of Dota, Gregway. Apology writes in and says, hi, Mitch. You get a lot.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Apology.
Hi, Apology.
You get a lot of heat for loving Dota 2 or MOBAs in general. Various devs have come and gone trying to explain to Greg and others why they should get into the genre. What's your elevator pitch about why you like MOBAs, and what would be a good place to start if someone is curious about jumping in for themselves? Apology. P.S. Best of luck at UB. I mean at whatever you might end up doing next. Smiley emoticon. Apology's one of those guys. He's going to make all the predictions, see if he can
It's funny. It's been really funny watching people guess where I'm going.
How many have you gotten it right?
I think literally one. And not even like a specific.
They didn't like nail it, but you're like, oh, that's close enough.
Yeah. So there's no definitive like, oh, if you want to learn to play MOBAs, play this, because they're all so goddamn different. And that's the thing that people don't understand if they don't play them, is like they'll look the same, with like the exception being like, oh, Smite looks a little different because of the camera angle, but it's very similar in a lot of ways, and also very different in many others to a lot of different MOBAs, because they all draw from each other and learn from each other. And Dota 2's most recent updates have been like very heavily inspired by League of Legends. But the elevator pitch, I don't know. For me, it's always been like cool 5-on-5 competitive cooperative multiplayer games with distinct heroes, each with unique abilities that combine in different ways. That is mechanically why it's great. On a more meta level, the reason I play and love MOBAs is because I get to spend a huge amount of time working together with people I love. Like I spend a ton of time with my friends playing Dota 2, and it feels good to be like, oh, I'm going to go help Jay. And after that, we're going to route up and we're going to back up Katie. And together we're going to accomplish a thing because we're a good fucking team. And that feels really good.
No,
in the same
totally.
way that playing the Division feels good because you're like, oh, we all, we were there for each other. We revived each other. We covered each other. We had support items for each other. I protected Fran. He protected Ty. He backed me up. Like that stuff works. And that is the essence of social gaming. And that's why Guild Wars is so good at it. And that's why WoW has been good at it for
ever
13 years, 14 years. If you want to get into MOBAs, I would recommend not starting with Dota 2, but at the same time, starting with Dota 2.
See, the hardest part, I remember distinctive? Oh, God, it's been a long day. Distinctly, when you walked into the office one day and you were like, I started playing Dota 2 last night and it sucks. I hate it.
I hated it.
And then it was literally like 2 days later, it came in and was like, after 15 hours, it clicked. And I loved this game.
It was the Far Cry 2 problem where I played Far Cry 2 and I was like, this game sucks. It's like really hard and unnecessarily punishing and kind of clunky and there's no fast travel that makes any sense and it's hard to get around and this is weird. And then after a certain amount of time of suffering, I was like, oh, fuck, that was the point. Cool, this is that. And now I understand the rules of this game and I'm playing it differently and now it's great. With Dota 2, I was like, I hate the writing. I hate the characters are all punny and they're all stupid and they all crack jokes all the time. And now like I adore that. It is the heart and soul of that game's personality. And I hinge on those jokes. And friends and I will constantly like Alexa and I will be talking about something and I'll just pop out a Dota quote. She's like, what?
Stop it. Stop it. She sprays water in your face. Like, bad Mitch.
Yeah. So like, and it's just so deeply ingrained in me. Where were we? What was the topic?
We're talking about what MOBAs, where you jump off from and how you started it and you hated it.
I hated it. And I played for a few matches and I had Leah Jackson at IGN was teaching me and she was very patient and very understanding. And I was like, this is great. I'm learning a lot. I just don't think this is for me at all. And I just kind of kept playing because I felt obligated to. MOBAs is such a massive growing genre that I knew nothing about. And I felt like I need to, as somebody covering games, be aware of everything. Like I need to be aware of everything.
Yeah.
And the consequence was I stopped caring about literally everything else because this was amazing. This was the game for me. And I love Dota 2 and it made me love League of Legends. It made me love Smite.
And Infinite Crisis.
Here's the Storm was all right. So I think it just took spending a bunch of time with it and finally playing with friends after I felt competent.
Sure.
Playing with people who could then teach me what I was doing wrong. And then actually pulling something off with a friend where it's like, I used a skill on that guy, which allowed Brian to come in and use a skill on that guy. And then Katie came in and killed him. We did it. That was really good teamwork. And now we have an advantage and I get to buy a cool item that do more fun stuff. And that escalation really, really, really clicked. But it took literally 25 hours or
Jesus
more maybe.
Christ.
And it's that is not remotely acceptable. That is never, after 50 hours, it's great. Don't just play for 50 hours.
The Final Fantasy 13 theory. Okay.
Exactly. But at the same time, if you're going to play MOBAs, I've always said, never start with Dota 2 because it's so fucking hard. Start with something, I hate the word simpler because it sounds like a pejorative, but League is simpler in that it's just more accessible and it makes more sense in a lot of ways to someone playing it. Smite is even more accessible just because it's from a perspective, it works. You can play with a controller and it works. The shop stuff is kind of taken care of for you if you want to handle it that way. Heroes of the Storm is a really good entry point for understanding heroes and how they function and how they work together, regardless of the objectives and maps and things that I didn't love in that game.
How's this Paragon shaping up?
I don't know. I've only played a little bit. It seems cool, but I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently about it yet.
Sure. That was the thing. Colin and I were always making fun of MOBAs just because we don't care. I love that you love it. Everyone should love what they love. But that was the greatest fucking twist at PSX.
The one more thing.
No. They ahead of time they're like, hey, So we're not doing the playing cards this year. We're doing these collectible cards for every one of the games.
Oh yeah, and Paragon's the most rare.
And one of the developers wants to give you a card for your panel. We're like, oh fuck yeah, who? And they're like, we can't tell you, but are you in? I'm like, yeah, of course we're in. And then afterwards we go up there, like, here are all your Paragon cards. Like, oh fuck, do you know who we are?
Amazing. But at the same time, I started with Dota 2, and because I started with Dota 2 and suffered and learned, and it was the hardest thing I've ever experienced in like learning to play a game. And
Sure.
like the most mentally exhausting thing, because it is like an encyclopedic amount of information to have a baseline understanding of how to play a game and be effective. It's crazy. It's so demanding that in doing that, I went to another MOBA, and I went to League after like 2 years of not playing. I was like, oh, I feel like a god. Like I feel like I'm really good at League, and I feel really good about how I play Smite, because it's probably true the other way around. Like had I started with League, I'd probably transition to Dota and be like, well, this is weird and complicated, but
I get it.
I get it.
Yeah.
And they are very different games that have different demands of the player and different flaws too. Not because it is an imperfect genre across the board, but I love it so much. But I just felt like I was readier for every MOBA that's ever come since, having spent 2,300 hours with Dota.
That makes sense. I would hope that would make you an expert at it, yeah. All right, that's your good elevator pitch.
Only took 9 minutes.
Now this one I like because it takes us back to our roots. George says, hey guys.
Hey George.
What are your hopes for Walking Dead Season 3? And have you started Michonne miniseries? Any thoughts you have? Good luck in your future endeavors, Mitch.
Let's do Michonne first.
Gotcha. I've only done episode 1.
Me too.
Episode 2 dropped while I was on this crazy travel.
Yeah, and I'm not going to play it.
Why?
I thought the first episode was fine at best.
Okay.
I love Michonne. As
Yeah.
a character, she's awesome. I think I've sort of reached capacity with The Walking Dead.
Oh, interesting.
I'm way behind on the comic, which might be great.
Oh, you mean overall as a franchise, Walking Dead?
I definitely don't care about the show. This season sounded great until they were like, tricked you, we're not doing Negan until next year.
Fucking shit out.
Yeah.
Ending. Stupid ending.
But with the games, I've always been like, oh, this is like, some people were down on season 2, and I was like, no, this is awesome. They're still doing really great stuff. Telltale's really clever about how they do stories in this universe, and I feel like Michonne is not. Michonne is not a clever way to do a story in this universe. And that's not to say it's a bad game by any stretch. Like, it is still totally, like, if you like the series, you're probably going to like this.
Yeah.
Fans of the genre. It's fine, and there are some good characters, and there's some good moments, but by and large, I just didn't care about the people she was with, what problems she got into, and what was to come.
I think I'm more up on it. I'm going to beat the next 2 things, but I did end episode 1 and I was like, okay, whatever. I haven't. It's not the Telltale Walking Dead where I think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you and I don't think would have had a great
No, we wouldn't have sat in a meeting
to-
room with 45 minutes and be like, oh my God, what did you do?
Exactly, because it's not that. But what I find super interesting about it is that, you know, in Walking Dead 1 and 2, I sat there, and if I'm playing as Lee, if I'm playing as Clem a bit different with the second time around, but she's my Clem, and I'm making her mine.
Yep.
Whereas with Michonne,
She's defined.
a character I know so well. I was using the silence option left and right. Like I'm like,
Oh, man,
Michonne
yeah,
wouldn't respond
yeah,
to this.
totally.
Michonne wouldn't do this. She's not gonna talk about this bitch who she doesn't know, and da 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 da. And like, there's that, and then also which I like. That's the part I like.
Yeah.
But I remember coming into this and it being where are you in the comics roughly ballpark?
Minor spoilers. They just let Negan out of prison.
Okay, good. So when they announced this, and being a comic nerd, and they're like, it's going to fill in the gap in time and all this different stuff,
And
I was like,
that arc is awesome.
and I was like, holy shit, how are they going to explain that? And then you pick up the game, you're like, holy shit, they're not.
oh, it's completely
This
fucking
is,
unrelated.
This is just happening in that gap of time.
Yes.
But it's like, as a reader, and even let's say that as you, maybe an outside fan who doesn't understand that's happening, what does that give you in terms of stakes, in terms of caring, in terms of motivation?
I think that's my big problem, is the context for this game is not interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas the context for Lee's story and Clem's story were fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think that Lee and Clem both had a vulnerability to them that Michonne does not. So I'm never afraid for her.
And that's the other thing too, is like, since we know where this falls in the timeline, it's like, well, we know, it's like Glenn in season 1. It's like, well, he's going to get out of here. I don't have to worry about Glenn being in trouble. You know what I mean?
And even if it's like, if any of these characters die around her, like, and anybody who did die, I was like, I don't care.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that.
There's
I just
nothing.
thought it was dumb. Like, that person should not have died. There was no purpose for that other than to be shocking.
And that's the thing, is like, it's a 400 days, right? It's like this interstitial. It's something that's here that, you know, we're trying out new things with the engine.
Yeah.
They're doing new things. And that's great. Cool.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
It just didn't click with me in the same way that 400 Days did. Like,
Sure.
I love 400 Days.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'll get back to it. I'm gonna play them, but it's a great example of like until this question, I kind of forgotten that episode
Me
2
too.
was out.
And
like,
to
all right.
our earlier conversation, like it's a game that is fine and is enjoyed by a lot of people I know and love and respect and whatever, but it just doesn't feel important or necessary to me.
Sure.
Like it's like, okay, that's fine. It's a good game, but I'm just gonna do other stuff.
So what about season 3 then?
I don't know. Like it's obviously happening. I don't know what I would want from it because what we wanted from season 2 was so clearly a Clementine story. Like we all, like you and I talked about this, like season 2 is Clem, season 2 is Clem, let us be Clem. And they did. And now, like, I really loved season 2 and its endings were so potentially different that for them to pick up anywhere after that, it's either one of two things has to happen is it has to be a different story about a different person.
Yeah.
It cannot be about these characters. And I would love to see them do new characters. Or I wanted to do something that Walking Dead has never really done and flash forward like 10, 20 years and be like older, way more badass Clementine.
Yeah.
Leading her own troop. This is the person she's become in the wake of Lee and Kenny and Luke and all these other people.
Yeah.
So
I would love
know.
that too, because my concern is like what you're saying is that the endings were so different, but I feel like there's a way that even if, and this is spoilers for Walking Dead season 2, but you shouldn't, even if your game ended where mine did, my real playthrough, which is Clem with the kid walking into the horde, you know, painted up like she's just, fuck it, I'm over it and I'm a badass and I can do this. You could still easily have it be that she still makes it to the Virginia town, which name is currently escapes me. But you know what I'm talking about, this Wellington, right? No.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Okay, well, she makes it to the Wellington, which still doesn't sound right.
But then it's like, well, is it with or without certain people?
Sure. But I mean, there's always a way to explain around that, right?
Yeah.
Like you could even just be that you don't talk about it. Then that'd be
Totally.
weird because I don't think they're going to do the whole like get your save back and bring this shit
Yeah, and
up.
it would be, I don't know, it might even be weird for her to be like, hey, remember Kenny? And you're like, why are you talking about
Yeah,
this?
why would you bring this guy up that like, you could, I mean, things ended badly for my last group. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
that's it. Because
It can be vague, yeah.
she got inside by herself, well, with the baby, but by herself regardless, right?
Yes.
Like that doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. So there's ways around it or whatever.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they do. I'm more excited for everything else Telltale's
I was going
doing.
to say, what about Batman?
Yeah, Batman's the one, man.
Batman sounds awesome.
They have a Marvel project I'm excited to learn more about too. They have their original IP, which I'm excited to learn more about. They've been quiet on that for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, I really want a Wolf Among Us sequel.
No, you're not going to get that crap.
I know. Probably not going to get another Borderlands either.
Which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it is and it isn't.
I mean, it was
Tales from the Borderlands,
Perfect as
awesome.
is,
Play
yeah.
Tales from the Borderlands
So
if you didn't.
great.
I forget what award it was up for recently. It didn't win, and I was like,
yeah.
no fucking way.
And
You
we're
know, not a
recommending,
game of
like,
the year.
I don't care about that franchise.
100%.
I've never
Well.
cared about. Like, I reviewed the first Borderlands and I was like, this is a great RPG.
Yeah.
I don't find the world or characters that interesting, and some things were frustrating. Borderlands 2, I was like, Handsome Jack's great. I'm kind of over the loot grinding, shoot and loot system. It's fine. I had a good time playing with Clements, but really miserable time playing alone. But fucking Tales from the Borderlands is so good.
That was the thing about Tales from the Borderlands. When it got announced, I was like, I like Borderlands, but I was the same way. Like,
I just
I don't
ignored
play
it
Borderlands
entirely.
for the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
Somebody told me, oh, they announced a Telltale Borderlands. I'm like, what?
What?
Why? And I saw the first demo and was like, this is fine.
Yeah.
But it really took playing the first episode to go like,
Holy
man, they have
shit.
brought some character to this world
Yeah.
in a way that even the full 40+ hour RPGs couldn't.
I always talk about it. Like I had it on my XMB for like a week and a half or whatever, and finally, I was in one of those moods. I was cranky and I was playing. Nothing was hitting it, and I popped out. I was like, well, I got 2 hours before bed. I can knock this out and see what it's about. And like 5 minutes in, you're laughing out loud. I'm like, holy shit, this just turned my day around. And like these characters and the intros that they did, like
my
the
God, they
music
were
and stuff.
so
I was like,
good.
holy shit, this game's amazing.
Yeah. Love Tales from Borderlands.
So there you go. That's what we think of Walking Dead season 3. Play Tales from the Borderlands. All right.
Next.
Crease 16 says, hey, Greg and Mitch. Hey. Long time, first time. My question is for Mitch. What is your absolute favorite gaming memory? I know it's hard to pick one. For me, it was the 6th grade, staying up till 7 a.m. playing Elder Scrolls Oblivion with my older brother for 15 hours straight. We haven't had an experience like that since, and it just holds a special place in my heart. So what is yours, Mitchie D? Thanks, Crease 16.
I want to cheat. I have a couple. I rented Suikoden 2 from a video store back when.
Those existed.
Yeah. And a friend and I were like, oh, this RPG is really cool. Like, we're not really into JRPGs, but this one has like a really fascinating story, and we like the characters, and the drama is actually really interesting. And we just never got to finish it. And we rented it again and started over, rented it, and then we just did this over and over. Like, fuck, what was it about? I remember loving it. I remember this character. And eventually we're like, you know what? Fuck this. We're going to rent it. We're going to play through it this weekend if it kills us. And we played through all of Suikoden 2 in like In like 72 hours, we played about 60.
Jesus.
It was like nonstop. It was gross. And we must have been like 16 or something.
Yeah.
And I loved it because it was like, it's my favorite JRPG ever. Like equal to or greater than Persona 4 for me.
Okay.
Scandalous.
Yeah, I know.
And I adore that story, and it has stuck with me so profoundly because I experienced it that way. And we just, we did the thing where we hand off and on, off and on.
Yep.
And, like that game had dialogue choices that I don't know really if they amounted to anything, but it meant a lot to us to be like, man, I cannot fucking believe you picked that. I cannot believe you stayed silent during that moment. Like that kind of stuff was really interesting to play with a friend.
100%.
Another really good one is I organized this recreational Dota 2 tournament, and it was like life sucking because it was so much to worry about, like organizing 80 players across like 16 teams and getting their schedules aligned. And it was a nightmare of just getting it to work. But man, like once we were in it and I was watching these games and like casting my first ever Dota game while watching my 10 friends play against each other in a match that like was super competitive and really fun and friendly, like that brought my love of Dota 2 to another level, because at that point it's like, oh, this is a game I like a lot. I'd love to get a bunch of people together to play it who really love it like I do. But for it to become something that like was as well loved as it was between all those people, it was like, okay, holy shit, like we made a thing
that was cool. Even as an
meaningful.
outsider who didn't understand Dota 2, doesn't understand Dota 2.
And it was so,
but like watching all those people, everyone on Twitter talk about it.
And
Like,
it's
damn,
like,
this
here's
is
the
cool.
Square Enix Montreal team playing against the Telltale guys, or Giant Bomb is playing against whoever. Like having those sort of associations with every team. It's like, oh, this is IGN, this is 2K. And it was just awesome to see, like, it was people in the games industry, but it wasn't about the games industry. And it wasn't people like straight up like, we're repping 2K. It's just like, oh, here's like a bunch of people from 2K.
This is like how we are assembled.
It was just so fucking fun to see that and see people get really excited about like, who are these guys? Oh, that's cool. Okay, cool. And they had like a frame of reference for people they didn't know playing against people they did.
Very nice. Final question for you, Mitchy D.
Yeah.
On this episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast. Chase.
Hi, Chase.
If you could choose any studio or individual to head up an ActRaiser reboot, who would it be and why? What advice would you give them to make a proper reimagining fit for modern audiences? Been listening to you since your first episode of Unlock. Thanks for the thought-provoking perspectives and your infectious attitude towards games.
Well, thank you.
He speaks for all of us.
Oh. There is no studio I would give that game to, because if I could give the rights to anybody, I would give them to me. I would do despicable things to get those rights from Square. I have a design doc in my Google Drive right now for what my ActRaiser game would be. Got a different name.
You can actually do this now. You're getting into games. You're going to make it. Maybe this is the game you're going to make.
Yeah, 20 years from now when I go indie, I'll make this game.
There you go.
Yeah, man, I fucking love ActRaiser, and I'm really bummed out that ActRaiser 2 what it was. And now I've just got like so many cool ideas that I have no idea how to execute on in any way, but I have cool ideas for what a new ActRaiser like game would be. And I just have this stupid design doc of like random dumb ideas and what might work and what might not, and what if we could try this. But I really love that series because it marries like 2D action platforming with God Sim stuff. And it on a Super Nintendo, like they just didn't have the technology to make it really a simulation. Whereas now you could do really fucking interesting stuff with the way people behave based on what a god does to them, and the kind of rules that god might impose on them or not. And then how those cultures might affect other cultures in a perimeter.
Sure.
Like there's really interesting stuff you could do that nobody's ever done. And so ActRaiser and Bushido Blade, why is nobody just remade and stolen these games?
Because sometimes games are too good and they can't be redone. Why aren't all the wrestling games just No Mercy again?
Yeah, they keep trying to do all this other shit that doesn't...
Oh, make it a sim wrestling. Fuck off. Nobody wants that. We want the cool shit.
I want to get a baseball bat from under the stage and knock a man out.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want it to look weird when I do it.
I want to rip Sting's fake face off and...
Well, I don't know if that ever happened. I don't know we're ripping faces off.
Yeah, it'd be... you remember if anybody was like a Rey Mysterio and you got behind him and did like the head choke? If you did it enough, you'd rip their mask off.
I'm sorry. I thought you meant the flesh off their face.
No, it was the same thing where Sting's makeup would be gone.
Okay. That'll give you. Okay, that's fine. That was the best.
Very strange.
A lot of people overthink the video games. Now that you go to indie games, don't overthink them.
Yeah.
Just make them good.
Yeah.
Just make them cool.
Yeah. No, I always used to think like, oh, it'd be really great to give the God part to Sid Meier and the action game part to like Tomonobu Itagaki.
Yeah, that'd be
and like
definitely
weird
awesome
shit
matchup.
like that used to excite me. Now I'm like, no, just give it to me. I'll hire some people, give me a studio, give me some money.
It's that easy, Square. He's all set. He's making games now. It's that easy. He knows so much.
I love that goddamn game so much.
I love you.
I love you.
Goddamn much, Mitchy D.
Oh,
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the first ever episode 65 of the Kind of Funny Gamescast, the first ever one-on-one Mitch and Greg podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey as we talk to our good friend Mitch. Remember, the Kind of Funny Gamescast posts early over on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. You can go there, pick it up, but if you have no bucks to toss our way, head over to youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, where we post it topic by topic, day by day, until the entire thing posts for free the following Friday as an MP3 and video. Mitch, I can't wait to find out what you do next, because there's no way you would have told me.
No.
I'm going to miss you, though.
I keep all my secrets. I'll see you in 65 weeks.
65 weeks, we got to get that back. Somebody...
Remind us. 'Cause I'm
Apology.
gonna forget.
Somebody week 57, let me know. So I can get the plane
Start
tickets
planning
booked.
it. Yeah, we'll figure out a visit because you'll be fucking rolling in money by then. You
Of
can
course.
afford to fly me out. It'll be great.
Exactly. We'll just make it a Patreon tier goal.
Perfect.
Okay. Mitch, I love you.
Love you.
I'm going to miss you.
I'll miss you too, man.
All right.
For real.
The weird hugs. Until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.